Today, we continue with more applications, more innovations, that were mentioned yesterday and in more detail. And we're applying these to a topic that is foremost in our minds at this moment, health and well-being. We start in a few seconds with talking about how we innovate with data to support nature-based solutions, and how data can play a very key role in realizing and mainstreaming nature-based solutions. We then go into a series of very intensive cafes. I'll be honest, it's very difficult to keep in touch with all the cafes. There's so much interesting things going on. I strongly urge you to try and catch a few of them. And then we go into an area where we look at how art and business can combine. We're looking at a very unique way of how the nature-based approach can be applied to developing cohesion in communities that are fractured. And we all know examples in our cities, of some more extreme than others, of where cohesion has fallen apart. And even as a European Union, we know our cohesion is at risk sometimes. So the nature-based approach offers an avenue. We all breathe the same air, we all drink the same water. We all have a common pool resource here, so therefore we should be combining to do this. And the nature-based approach, the co-creation approach, can certainly help there. And then we conclude today by looking at capacity building through one of our hubs. We're talking about the Brazilian hub. It's timed to coincide with the start of the day in Brazil. And we'll be giving some examples there. Finally, I just wanted to mention yesterday, but I forgot, sorry, I think Sean mentioned it, but when we're speaking about COP26, you can send your message to the decision makers at COP26. Just go to the main area of the hop in, and you'll see in the expo area, you'll see a place that you can send your message. I also strongly suggest, advise or plead, I would ask if you would like to follow us at Connecting Nature on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, or LinkedIn, and you'll find them at the top of our website. We add new material, new publications, guidebooks, and other resources every so often, and I run the Twitter site, and so I not only regularly send out information about Connecting Nature and our work, but also about the nature-based solutions being done in other projects and other networks, other innovations, and emerging resources. So feel free to follow and contribute as well. So thank you very much for joining us for our second day. I hope you get a lot out of it. And without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to the team in Glasgow, who I can see in the background are coming to get going with the next session. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jillian Dick, the Spatial Planning Manager at Glasgow City Council, and I'm going to try and guide you through hopefully an interesting conversation about naturally smart cities. So if you're settling down for your breakfast on the other side of the Atlantic, joining us for your lunch break, having your afternoon tea, or if you're in Australia or New Zealand raising a glass of wine to us, you're more than welcome. We're going to try and make data interesting. What I want to do is introduce you to David. Hopefully he's going to pop up on the screen now. There he is. Hi, David. Good afternoon.
Hello,
It's
Julian.
1 o'clock where you are. Hi. David's going to be running around metaphorically in the chat, trying to give you some useful links as we speak about data, and also trying to answer some of the questions. He'll gather up some of the other questions and bring them back to us probably in about 45 minutes. He will post 2 questions for you. One of them is, what's one example of where you anticipate obstacles to building impact assessment systems or collecting your data? And the other question that David may pose to you is, what are the resources that you think you need to do this on a more mainstream basis? So we'll let David go, and we'll bring the rest of my friends back on so that you're not just listening to me. And I'm going to hopefully be joined by Adina, John, Rania, and Claire. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Adina, who's going to hand on to John, who's going to hand on to Rania, who's going to hand on to Claire, and then Claire's going to pass you back to me. So over to you, Adina, to start the ball rolling.
Yes, hi, I'm Adina Dumitru. I'm a senior researcher at the University of A Coruña, specializing in social and health impacts of nature-based solutions, and I lead the impact evaluation work in Connecting Nature.
John, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
Do we have about 5 minutes, Jillian? Is that about right?
Go for it. If you want to take the 5 minutes,
Yeah.
you take the 5 minutes. Go for it.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to chat with you. Okay, good morning to everybody from a sunny North Berwick. I'm about 25 miles east of Edinburgh. I'm the program manager for a project called Park Power. That's an initiative for exploring the opportunity for urban green space and blue space to transition our energy system to a low carbon future. I work for Green Space Scotland, which is a charity and social enterprise that pioneers new approaches to managing and resourcing green spaces. And I actually started my working life as a GIS specialist. I worked initially with environmental, demographic, and socioeconomic data sets, some very large, like the census. But after about 15 years of doing that, I changed my career direction, and I've now been working in the renewable energy sector for the last 10 years, delivering solutions around wind, solar, and heat technologies. I've had to say I've been delivering renewable energy solutions, but in reality, I might as well have been wearing a suit, I think, because for many of the customers that we had, I wasn't really delivering energy solutions. I was delivering financial solutions that were effectively dressed up to look like wind turbines or solar panels. So although renewable energy opportunities start life as ideas, they're effectively validated through a process of data analysis, often using a sort of constraints mapping approach. This sieves the sites, allowing the most promising sites to fall through, and capturing those that raise alarm bells. And this process is often repeated through multiple iterations until we end up with a short list of the most promising sites. And that's a very common process. So much like nature-based solutions, shortlisting renewable projects, they're often subject to financial and legal due diligence to determine whether or not they stack up. And this critical nature of robust and verifiable financial data modeling, it's likely that few projects will be able to avoid this type of business case process, and achieving this financial sign-off in projects remains a major hurdle for many nature-based solutions. There's still, in my view, predominantly a short to medium-term attitude to financial risk within most organisations, and a lack of recognition by senior decision makers of the emerging natural capital accounting approaches. Most recently, I've been working with Green Space Scotland for 2 years on Park Power, as I said, and one benefit of my dual working life is having a combination of data and technology areas. So it's really combined my domain knowledge and my data and technology knowledge, which I think is a really useful mix to bring together, and one that I think will be increasingly in demand for our growing pool of data scientists. Park Power has involved working with a wide range of energy and property related geospatial data to drive this similar sort of opportunistic mapping process. And a key catalyst for Park Power was the arrival of consistent, publicly accessible national scale data. On the supply side, we had the Ordnance Survey, our national mapping agency, that published a detailed data set of all the green space sites for Great Britain. And on the energy demand side, the Scottish Government also produced a Scotland's heat map, which allows us to produce, to understand heat demand down to the level of individual buildings. And while there remain some national data gaps, it would be great to fill. The existence of these two data sets gave us the key raw materials to design a workflow, excuse me, to design a workflow that was based around two key questions. Those questions were, what potential do Scotland's green and blue spaces offer to support renewable energy services that will help us in our low carbon energy transition? And the second question was, of the nearly 100,000 green space sites, which of those offer the most promising opportunities that could be developed as typical demonstrators. Those were our key sort of design questions that we came up with at the start. And everything from that point onwards in terms of data and workflow was based on trying to answer those questions. Now, instead of trying to stitch local data sets together, we kept to using consistent national geospatial data sets. We use GIS as a process to workflow and analyze that data. And our experience has been to keep this flexibility around this workflow model because things change and your understanding improves as you move through the project. So flexibility is really key in doing that. And we had examples where we wanted to do things like use the river network, but we were unfortunately prevented from doing that by commercial licensing fees. So there's all sorts of things that crop up along the way that you want to do, but you can't.
That's brilliant,
so,
John, that's brilliant. Thank you. So
Yep.
We'll catch up with some of those points as we get into the questions. Just want to give the others. Adina realised that she'd said hello and then hadn't said anything else. So I'm going to bounce very quickly back to Adina, and then I'm going to get Adina to pass straight over to Rania. Go for it, Adina.
Sure. Thank you, Jillian. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought we were first introducing ourselves, so that's why there was the mistake. But I just want to say a few things about the approach we've taken in the Connecting Nature project. To doing evaluation, to doing monitoring and evaluation, as we worked together with the city of Glasgow and also with other cities across Europe to define what we call robust monitoring and evaluation approaches. We did this in a co-production approach, so we worked very closely with cities to identify their needs and also to identify their points of learning or what were their important challenges in developing these monitoring and evaluation approaches. And this was really a collaborative effort between a team of scientists, which had expertise in a lot of different types of benefits of nature-based solutions, from environmental to health and social cohesion, and also Marcus was mentioning at the beginning, and also economic benefits of nature-based solutions. And we worked, as I was saying, very closely with the cities, especially with three frontrunner cities, so Glasgow, which is here, and we'll say a lot more about it, but also Genk, the city of Genk in Belgium, and the city of Poznan in Poland. Now, a few things I would like to mention about this is, first of all, we took a long-term approach and view to creating this capacity in cities to develop monitoring and evaluation. We wanted to create a situation where cities were able to embed this in their regular practice instead of just being, a one-time effort. And the way to do this, as we learned through this process, which was a lot of trial and error, has actually been to create a step-by-step approach that cities could follow to design these robust evaluation plans. We have described this approach in a mini guidebook that David, I think, will pop in the chat so that you can all see it in a mini guidebook that actually runs you through this process we've gone through from one step to the next. And we think at least it is of help to cities to kind of see a structured approach and be able to do it like that. Now, a few of the lessons we learned, as I mentioned, there are many. It was hard to choose a few, but I just chose a few because otherwise I think Jillian will pop her hand out through my camera and kind of make me shut up. So the lessons we learned first is that it pays off to engage in careful and structured reflection about monitoring and evaluation from the first stages of planning of nature-based solutions. And this entails, on the one hand, connecting the strategic objectives of the cities with the objectives of the nature-based solution itself, but also taking this approach to looking at how you think those benefits are actually going to be achieved. So in a way, reflecting on your theory of change. What are the pathways through which you think this is going to be achieved? Because one thing we see often is there is an assumption that just by putting some of the nature-based solutions in place, that will solve all our problems, right? But we do not think about how is it actually that we having a park in place or having any kind of nature-based solution in place will deliver those particular benefits, and also for which social groups. I think this is really important because different groups use this very differently. And the second point was we took, as I said before, a medium and long-term view to evaluation, but also to data, to this idea that you can generate data, as also John, I think, was mentioning. Looking at what data you already have and also looking at how you can generate data that over the long term can help you evaluate different nature-based solutions and hopefully in time get you to a point where you can evaluate impact at the city-wide level, right? Which that is, we think, is an ideal situation. Progressively, you generate evidence that then also helps you with guiding decision making and strategic decision making. The third lesson would be that we should take baseline data very seriously, and I think Rania will talk a bit more about this, and connect to data streams that you have in the cities, nationally, and also at European and international levels, especially GIS data, as John very nicely pointed out, are very useful in this effort. And establish through this process a series of alliances that will be of mutual benefit. Because what we have discovered actually is that you have much more data than you think you have at the beginning, right? So there's much more data available than one thinks at the beginning. Finally, invest in cooperation with scientists and experts, GIS experts, data experts in your city, and include also in your measurement of benefits measures, I'm finishing now, Jillian, measurements that allow you to map the use of different social groups. So how different social groups actually use these nature-based solutions. These are sometimes more direct measures that we need to have in place. Finally, just to say that on the European level, a handbook is about to come up that will also show this from different cities. And also we are working on an impact evaluation decision tool that cities could use to support them through this process. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant, Adina. I was actually giving you a thumbs up, but I think there's a wee bit of a delay on the way this is being broadcast in. I'm going to pass the baton on to Rania. Over to you. Introduce yourself, Rania.
Hi, everyone. Apologies for the 3-second blackout there. My internet connection just went off. Hi, my name is Rania Cervezi. I work with Jillian in Glasgow City Council. I'm a GIS officer. So my role is basically all around data and analysis. Yeah, we're working on the Connecting Nature project together. And so far, I have been working on finding the data that's required to establish this baseline that Adina talked about before, and assess the impacts that our open space strategy is having in terms of health and well-being, social cohesion, the environment, and economics. And I guess this baseline is based on a list of indicators that academic partners such as Adina have produced, where they have suggested which indicators are the best for evaluating nature-based solutions. And I've basically been trying to create that baseline and then assess how things are going in terms of the open space strategy. So apart from that, in my role, it's all about kind of innovating with new technologies, making sure that we use the latest tech on web mapping, and making sure that we represent everything in a map format, in an easily accessible format, and we represent the trends, the geospatial trends around all these different topics, and get people involved through dashboards and delivery plans and that kind of stuff. So a bit shorter from my side, but hopefully Claire can continue with her introduction.
Yep, over to you, Claire. Claire,
my name's
go for it.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Claire Cooper. I'm a PhD candidate at Durham University, and I'm also part of the Naturevation project, which is a sister project to Connecting Nature. I also have extensive experience of working in the UK water industry, delivering behaviour change programmes. My PhD research examines the relationship between the different characteristics of nature-based solutions and how they relate to underlying structural conditions that influence health inequality. Methodologically, I'm drawing on complex data analysis methods such as geometric data analysis that allows us to explore complex relationships between both quantitative and qualitative data gathered through open data sources, but also interviews, etc. So that's me, and back to you, Julian.
Brilliant. Thanks, Claire. You've actually given us a wee bit more time to have some conversations. There is an interesting question that David's picked up where people are saying, from a Glasgow perspective, have we got any projects looking at plastic pollution on the Clyde? Our straight answer would be there may well be with our environmental health officers, but we're not aware, but we can go and ask colleagues and see if there is anything about plastics. I don't know, Rani, you haven't picked up on anything on that, have you? No, that's grand. We will take a note of that and move on. So we're going to throw some questions at the panel. Others may join us as we go, and David's going to keep looking at the questions. So Claire brought us home early, so I'm actually going to throw the first question to Claire. And some of our panelists have touched on the issues around causality and aligning the data they have to the social and community experience. Can you explain what causality is and how we can establish it with data?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Jillian. So in very simple terms, causality, or causation as it's sometimes referred to, is about figuring out why things happen and the nature of the relationship between the cause, say for example, the influence of engaging with nature-based solutions, and the effect or the results, which might be around the effect on mental health or on physical well-being. And in trying to establish causality, and I really want to emphasize try here, we want to determine the influence of effects, say a variable or factor that might be an event, a process or state of being on another variable. And it sounds quite simple, but in reality, it is very difficult. We often find that there is a correlation or an association that might be referred to between two or more different variables or factors, but it can be challenging finding evidence that links one thing that causes another. And it's also important to remember that correlation isn't the same thing as causation. So for example, in my research, I've examined the relationship between different types of nature-based solution. So that's everything from green roofs, pocket parks, large urban parks, SUDs, different coastal MBS, their ecosystem services, and mortality indicators for cities using evidence from the Urban Nature Atlas published by the Natureation Project and the Urban Audit, which is a pan-European quality of life data set for cities. And I think David's going to put some links in the chat to those. And we looked at how the relationship between the indicators, the Urban Atlas and the Urban Audit, and found that some types of nature-based solution and their ecosystem services are related to mortality influenced by gender or influenced, say, through heart or respiratory disease. But I couldn't prove causality due to the scale of the analysis and the type of data that allows cross-comparison for European cities. And I think, again, David will put a link to a chat that for an article I wrote in Network Nature that summarises some of those results. And I'm not going to elaborate on the issue of scale or granularity, because my colleagues are going to be talking about that next. But I would like to touch on, if we want to establish causality, what are the things that we need to think about? So first of all, we need to think about if there's a correlation between the dependent variables. So those are the factors that stand alone that aren't necessarily changed by the other variables that we're trying to measure, for example, age, and the dependent variables. So these are the things where we're looking to see whether there is a change or something that's been tested as part of an experiment. However, as I've alluded to already, correlation isn't sufficient to establishing causality. We also need to determine if the change in the effect has occurred before the change in the independent variable to determine if causation is actually genuine. And we also need to investigate what the reason for the connection between cause and effect is and what the influence of the surrounding context. For example, is there an influence between socio-economic deprivation and the relationship between different types of nature-based solutions and physical health, for example? Hence, establishing causality is complex, and some researchers believe that it's not necessarily possible to determine this. But I argue that experimental research design could provide us with an opportunity to test causal relationships by setting up different types of living lab experiments where we're able to monitor the effect of different types of MBS across different comparison and control groups over time. Now, finally, I also want to highlight there are different ways of thinking about this challenge too. So in his seminal work on cultural capital, Bourdieu argued that social causality isn't reducible to what he talked about as a combination of pure causal effects, and suggests that causality can sometimes conceal complex relationships in complex systems. So to overcome this challenge, in my PhD research, I've been using geometric data analysis, such as things like principal component analysis, multiple factor analysis, to kind of dig out patterns in complex data sets, such as the Urban Atlas and the Urban Audit, using both qualitative and quantitative data. And whilst this approach doesn't allow us to prove causality between different types of nature-based solutions, structural conditions, and health inequality, what it does do is it allows us to draw a clearer picture of how the different characteristics of MBS, say how they are governed, how they are managed, who's involved, etc., they relate to structural conditions that influence underlying health inequalities in cities.
That's great, Claire. Thank you so much. There are a number of questions coming in about causality and some of the and I'll get Adina to pick up some of these and maybe kind of bounce back to you, Claire. And there's a number of questions as well that hopefully Rania and John can pick up with the questions I'm going to throw to them about how do you know the data is reliable, how do you deal with uncertainty, etc. So I'm going to pass over to Rania, and it sounds like a really simple question, but can you talk us through some of the issues about finding the right data?
Yeah, I can go on. We've discussed this before for ages, so hopefully I want to try and keep it as limited as possible. But yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about some of the main things that I have encountered in the past 2 years working on this. And like Claire mentioned before, granularity is one of the big ones, because you often don't get the data at the scale that you need them to in order to be able to make those kind of relationships and links. This is specifically, I have found that specifically relevant in terms of economic data. They're often available at a kind of city scale, and you want to be looking at maybe more neighborhood or community scale changes or patterns. Same for environmental data as well. Whenever analysis and research is done, it's usually at a kind of bigger scale as well. So examples could be from the economic side of things, tourism data, they're usually at city scale. Carbon sequestration and stuff, that's usually again at city scale. So obviously from a data analyst point of view, you always want to have the kind of smallest administrative boundary that you can get, because then you can start analyzing trends. So that's that one. A related one is periodicity, and that's around the kind of timescales and the duration that the data is provided at. So this has actually been a major one for me in terms of health data, because related to confidentiality, public health organizations don't necessarily publish data at a kind of recent maybe interval, which means that you can never track the latest trends on things, and they're usually aggregated across multiple years. And again, that's mainly around health stuff. So the ScotFo website, for example, it provides life expectancy, but it's, I think, a 4 or 5 year kind of aggregates. So it's not very useful when you're trying to see how things are changing year on year. So another one that I said before is related, I guess, to granularity and periodicity is confidentiality, and that's a major one when it comes to health and well-being. And it's understandable. It's just that it can be a big barrier when you're trying to do something that, in the end of the day, is good for the community. And so you're not trying to get into anyone's personal information. You're just trying to get trends. But hopefully we're working towards that, and I'll say just a bit more about that later on. But the next thing, and I think this is a major thing when you're looking at local government and generally government organizations, that there's a lack of cooperation between departments, teams, and different institutions as well. I have often had to go outside of the council for someone to suggest someone inside the council who can give me the data that's required, which is, it sounds a bit bizarre, but it is the way it works, and it's I think, just a very old-fashioned way of working sometimes. So that could be an issue. However, we are coordinating things with the corporate data team within our council, which has been a really great cooperation so far, because we've been able to get some context that we wouldn't be able to before. And the final thing I wanted to say around limitations and problems with getting data is the data formats. That obviously relates to both metadata, what kind of quality of data you're getting, but also the format in terms of, is it in PDF report that you basically need to read the whole thing to find the data, and then you need to input them into a format that works for you? Is it in Excel spreadsheets that have no geospatial element to them, so then you don't know where things are actually located? And obviously, a lot of the trends, I'm obviously biased because I'm a GIS person, but a lot of the trends that we're looking at are geospatially, they have a geospatial element to them. And as such, you can't ignore that. So I have had some issues around that. And again, I think the most common places you see that is health data, where health boards are producing reports and are not so open to giving out information, the raw data. So final thing to say before I finish up is about how I think the best way to deal with this is really engaging with as many people as possible. And I guess a phrase I've used before is being annoying, making sure you don't let people get away with living in their own silos and things. And like I said before, essential thing for us, it has really opened up a lot of doors, is coordinating with the central data team who are dealing with the exact same problems as us. However, we have already established the indicators and data sources we need. So it's a matter of making this a corporate tool for the whole council. So back to you, Jillian.
Brilliant, thanks, Rania. Yeah, you and I both don't like data on the back of a fag packet, for want of a better description. I'm spotting that my Twitter pal Tassie has decided to give us a whole load of big words, and I'm really glad I'm about to pass the baton on to Adina so she can deal with all the big words. But as practitioners, Adina, we've often found it easier to find quantity data to use for impact assessment rather than quality data. It's particularly relevant when we start talking about social cohesion and health and well-being. Can you talk us through some of the techniques to get that rich data that we really need?
Yeah, I'll say a few things about that, Julian, but first, if you allow me, I'd like to pick up on a few things that were said here, because I think it's really interesting. So just starting from what the latest thing that Rania said, how being annoying has been a good strategy. But also, I just know from what we've discussed in the case of Glasgow that actually, beyond that, those conversations have actually unlocked a lot of possibilities for cooperation around data as well. So the good thing about taking this integrated approach, also with the longer term view of how you end up having the right data with the right granularity and at the right scale, understand it as a long-term process, right? I think that is really the key. Start from where you are and what you have at this point, even if it's very little. And then from there, establishing these collaborations and these conversations helps with slowly, sometimes, right, slowly, other departments and other agencies seeing the advantages of actually combining efforts to reach, to have, data that is useful for more than one purpose. So I think that's a key issue. The other thing, related to what Claire has said, causality is a really complex issue, but it's also important that you solve some of these problems if you take it into account from the beginning, right? So if you take this seriously from the beginning, and we insist a lot on the idea that collaboration with scientists is very important because it makes life a lot easier in some ways, it makes it complicated in others, but it makes it easy in some ways. And there, what we have kind of recommended is this, as rules of thumb is, make sure you have before and after data as much as possible and in as many situations as possible. We all know that's an effort, but if you take a view of how this will develop over time and how this effort will contribute to your good data over time, that effort and investment might pay off. And then also the other sort of tricks in a way we use is comparative sites data, which is very complicated because we know it's very difficult to find neighborhoods or sites that are very similar to each other in socio-demographics and also urban planning conditions. But sometimes that is possible. And also the other thing we use sometimes is just comparing within the same neighborhood between people that are more exposed for a reason or another, they're more exposed or they use more DNBS than for people that don't. And we can also compare between those. That is as close as we can get to at least making some assumptions about causality, because as Claire very well explained, that's not, sometimes some scientists think it's not even possible. But anyway, we can say some things around that. And finally, just as to go back to Jillian's question, this, and it's related also to causality, just use mixed methods. Yeah, this is always the best approach, right? We have quantitative data in the cities, and even that quantitative data, so what we refer to as numbers, sometimes for social and health indicators, it's actually qualitative data. It's just expressed through surveys, right? So we sometimes think that because it's a number, there's some quantity to it. There are surveys that are very good at the European level that look at social cohesion, that look at social capital, they look at different forms of social capital, they look at pro-environmental behavior, so things that are relevant for nature-based solutions. Solidarity also, things that are social justice issues. But also it's always a very good approach, especially when you go in depth and you want to see the particular, benefits of a particular, the impacts of a particular exemplar. Going for those in-depth studies where you then mix qualitative methods, which there's a wide array of them, but you can use there from interviews to focus groups. You can use citizen science approaches that are qualitative and that also involve people in the neighborhood in the data gathering process, which is a lot of fun and has other benefits as well. And finally, making sure that you actually also collaborate on particular aspects with experimental research, as Claire was saying. So experimental research is really important. There are obviously limited elements sometimes that you can, test in the laboratory. So, but that says a lot. That tells you a lot more about causality than you're able to say otherwise. And then you can combine that now with natural experiments. There are natural experiment situations and possibilities sometimes that you may take advantage of. Artificial reality is becoming a big thing. So we start being able to do experiments with exposure to nature in artificial reality environments. There's a lot to say about that, but it's a way of also dealing with these issues. And so there are many, many ways, and technologies and methodologies are improving and becoming more artificial intelligence based, very fast. So making sure you have an open conversation about this and make this a key issue within your city council, knowing that if you do this regularly in a few years' time, maybe, if you look also at the 5-10 year span, you will start having a considerable amount of data that's going to be very useful in decision making and also in kind of guiding your future projects. So back to you.
Brilliant.
Julian.
Thanks, Adina. I've just noticed that David's got a conversation over in the chat from a colleague of ours called Deirdre, who's talking about how volunteers collect data. And certainly what we're trying to do in the council is make sure we start to give them the tools to collect that data on a GIS basis so that we don't have to spend a lot of time translating it, which is what often happens if it's hand-drawn on a map or if it's drawn in a different way. I'm now going to bring us back down to a more a project-based but Scotland-wide. So the last question in this kind of series is for John. You've been focusing on a particular nature-based solution, namely Park Power. Can you talk us through how you identified the data you needed, who owned it, and how did you get to use it?
Thank you, Jillian. As I said at the beginning, we came up with a couple of key questions that effectively defined the data that we wanted, but also the data kind of acted as a catalyst for the project as well, and the arrival of the data. So I guess there was a certain sense of designing the questions a little bit around the data, which I guess my academic colleagues would probably throw their hands up and say that's not a very good method. But in terms of practicality, understanding that, as my colleagues have said, understanding that you have a national consistent data set down to individual building level that could then be aggregated to any other geography was incredibly useful, and I totally agree with Rania's point on that. It's to have a data set that is down at that level of granularity was fantastic, and just big support for Scottish Government in creating and making this data set available for understanding how heat is being consumed across Scotland. So this data became available. The Ordnance Survey Green Space data also became available, and those were two sort of data sets that really jumped out for us. But there were a whole range of other data sets that we wanted to bring together, some of which were local, which we decided was going to be too time consuming. Some we would have liked to have had, but had commercial restrictions or licensing restrictions over, or license fees that were required. We didn't. We haven't used a lot of qualitative data, although I take the point that ideally a mixed method brings its benefits. There's I think a lot of those data sets have really sort of helped us to bring the project together and define what we wanted to get out of it.
So that's
Sorry,
great.
Jillian.
No, that's fine. It is that problem of what data you have. I'm going to pass to Adina, who's waving at me. I was just going to say, David, go for it. Adina, go.
No, I just wanted to make a little comment, just a little reaction to what John was saying. John, I think organizing your questions around the data is a great starting point, and it's a very valid method. You can make use of the data for your objectives that's out there, and then from there you can see which data you're missing, and in the future you can get a new data. I mean, it's perfectly valid. It's a perfectly valid methodology.
Thank you. That makes me feel a whole lot better. Thank you. Yeah, it's like
exactly. We're all kind of feeling in the dark here. We're all learning how we're going. There's been a useful kind of question, I think, from somebody saying, how do we collect our data for our perception of parks? Well, if the parks in Glasgow are working on how we gather your perception of parks, it's one of the things that we're working with Adina, and David is in the chat at the minute, and we've done a few experiments or trial and errors with the Bellahouston growing space, for instance, and with the growing space that's being developed in Drumchapel. And we're starting to look at how we develop a questionnaire for the people who are dealing with stalled spaces. So we're working on it. We're not there yet, but we are trying to get you the tools so that we can collect your information in a way we can use it, but we can give it back to you in a usable way. I'm going to give David another 2-3 minutes in the chat before he comes back to Julian. He's come back now. Spontaneous, that's great. But just while David's gathering the questions for us, this is slick. You've all seen my bits of paper flying off the side, I've realised, as I keep us going. So I'll never make a broadcaster at this rate, but hey-ho. If you can all think about your key lessons that you've learnt, one key point, I'm going to ask David to tell us what's been going on in the chat. So over to you, David.
Yes, there are being many questions about what you are commenting about, but many of them you have already answered them. But a very good question is, how does the panel advocate dealing with uncertainty in the data and getting robust indicator of the positive or negative change? This was one of the main questions, and another couple of questions were about causality and the importance of causality in the nature-based solutions, specifically in this kind of urban interventions.
Okay, I'm going to start with Claire, and then I'm going to punt to Adina. So Claire, do you want to take that one first, please?
So sorry, could you just repeat that question again for me, David?
Yes, of course. The discussion in the chat was about how the causality issue was specific or special for nature-based solutions or not, or if it is the same of other urban interventions.
I think, for me personally, I think that it's the issue of causality is a common issue across lots of different studies. And for example, I'm working on a project where I'm trying to evaluate the effect of urban gardening on health and social cohesion within Newcastle. And I've come into that project kind of 3 years after it started. So to be able to do what we were talking about earlier in terms of designing your data collection before you implement your MBS and continuing to monitor that over time and looking at monitoring what the impact of that intervention is on health or on any other factor that you're exploring. Could be job growth, could be improving your skills, etc. It's quite difficult to do that if you haven't designed your study in a particular way to be able to kind of address those issues. But
okay,
establishing causality it's fundamental that we try to do this, because increasingly we're being asked for evidence to prove the benefits of MBS so that others can justify investment to upscale them, particularly amongst the private sector.
It's really interesting. I think certainly from a city's point of view, we're starting to get private sectors, particularly with COP26 coming going. We want to plant trees because it'll offset our carbon, and we want to do this. And we know that some of the interventions we're making will save money for the health and wellbeing, will save money for the NHS, but we can't prove where we're saving the money in order to get that money to come back to us. Adina and David have worked with Rania to try and speak to some of our communities in Bella Houston about that. It might be worth, Adina, just explaining what you did to allow Rania to have that conversation with Bella Houston to try and pick up some of that causality.
Yeah, it is what there was a question actually in the chat about how sometimes procurement rules favor big data, right? Favor these kinds of sort of big projects where you get a lot of data and especially quantitative data, which don't get me wrong, is very valuable. I work a lot with quantitative data, but at the same time, when you go and you want to look at in-depth effects of urban gardening, for example, you sometimes need more qualitative approaches to understand what's going on, especially when there's not a lot of evidence available, as, for example, in terms of the mental health effects, right? They're starting to be evidence on this, but still we do not know exactly through which pathways nature affects mental health and for what groups and to what extent and in what doses, right? These are all questions that we still do not have. Because if we do get answers to these questions, for example, one very cool effect of that is going to be that we can do what is now being tested in some parts of Europe, which is nature-based prescriptions, right? We can use this as a prescription for different health conditions, especially chronic health conditions. And so what we did in Bella Houston is we also designed, beyond the quantitative data collection, we designed an interview guide where we first talked to the charities involved and to all the organizations that are intermediaries in this process of assigning lots and using the urban garden, to tell us, and we had a very structured discussion about the different types of health and social effects they noticed as a result of using this. And the nice, cool thing about this is that you can actually go into the dynamics. You can go in depth about this. And even if then you're not able to say, you don't able to have this big data available, you can say a lot more about how this happens. And then that can be translated into hypotheses for quantitative data, right? Quantitative data. So you can design further studies based on that. And the next step we're going to take also we did this also because during COVID, it was a bit more difficult to do this kind of research. And now we are going to go to a next stage where we are going to speak to the actual users, right? So we're going to do interviews with the users of the Bella Houston Garden. And so all this data will come together then, the quantitative and the qualitative, to be able to say a lot more about what the effects are in the neighborhood and on particular users. And then I just wanted to say, for social phenomena and social and health, social phenomena just broadly, they are multi-determined. That's one of our big problems when we're trying to establish causality, right? Because when you say, okay, rates of obesity, we know they're affected by physical activity, and we know they're affected by having, the right nature infrastructure around to be able to carry out that physical activity. But they're also determined by the diet you have and by the availability of certain foods and by the cost so there are so many things that you need to consider. That's why it's important to think about it from the beginning. If you think about it from the beginning and you have this kind of support, then you can take this into account. And finally, I think one way that you can go around this issue of procurement rules, it's sometimes not all the research and not all the data collection has to be done by the city, right? As we said here, universities are doing a lot of that, a lot of in-depth studies. And sometimes that information doesn't get, different agencies are doing research as well, and that information doesn't get known, doesn't get diffused, disseminated sufficiently. So if data is taken seriously, I could imagine, data days, in the city, one time a year, or you can have, some ways of, a symposium, an innovation summit like this one, where you talk about data at the city level, and the kinds of studies that are coming out and the ones that are cool at that point, yeah.
And you want to, they're digital. I'm just going to bring John in here, because when we were prepping for this, there was an interesting conversation where John went, I have no idea what causality is, and I don't know how it impacts on my project. And we kind of talked around some of the stuff that the pilot that had been done in Softon Park, it was heating some of the kind of the homes or something. And it was actually a knock-on effect of designing the park power into that park, improve that park as a space for people. And if you don't know to make those connections, you're not going to collect that data. So John's been collecting data, if I'm right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, John, about how much power you're getting out of that park and where it's going to. But you haven't, as Green Space Scotland, been collecting the data about how people feel about that park, for instance.
That's right, Jillian. Yep. And also, there are all sorts of barriers to doing it in terms of some of that data about ongoing monitoring of an operational site is quite commercially sensitive, and people are not necessarily very comfortable always in releasing data about how good their project has been. So because it allows you to potentially evaluate the project as to the degree of success. So it's not always easy to get hold of, certainly at a level of granularity that will allow you to assess things. But yes, ideally, you'd want to make sure that the performance of any operational system was in line with your parameters that you designed it for. But the reality is often different, and quite often you don't have a budget, or your budget is time limited to getting the project sort of done and dusted, but it doesn't cover the ongoing monitoring.
Yeah, that's so right. There's always, we've talked in the Connecting Nature project about stewardship. So there's always money to do the planning and the delivery of a project. There is never much money whether it's revenue or otherwise, to do that ongoing monitoring, that ongoing impact assessment and keeping people going. I'm going to come to Rania last to bring us home, because Rania has put something helpful in our little bit of chat saying it's about who you know and who has the data and who has it. So do you want to bring us home about that data? Because you're doing all this wonderful work, but if you vanished tomorrow or got run over by the proverbial bus, we'd be in real trouble. Because we'd need to find somebody else, and we'd have to go through 3-4 months of argument in the council to get a replacement. So, you know, what is the connections of the data, etc., Anya?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's basically just reiterating what I said before. It's about making sure you engage with as many people as possible. Like Adina said, universities may be doing stuff and other organizations may be as well, but they don't always publicize that. And it's really important that you somehow break these barriers or make sure that you're at least aware of these things. And like I said before, it's through our interaction and cooperation with the central data team that we have opened up so many doors. Some that they didn't know themselves, and a lot that we didn't know. Yeah, it was just a complete, life-changing experience for me.
Yeah, cool. We're getting a slight delay because we're broadcasting in, but it's fine. Just to bring it home, I'm going to go round everybody and say, what's the one lesson that you've learned before we hand back over to encourage people to go to innovation cafes, etc. So, Adina, what's the one lesson we should take away from this?
Well, start by lowering a bit your expectations, but be optimistic, because you are also change makers in this. Every time you do this, you push the tipping point further in seeing gathering data as normal, right? And in getting the investments for this to be normal. I think in a few years from now, there will be no question that more funding needs to go to this.
Okay, Claire, what's the one lesson we need to take away?
When designing your data collection for your projects, talk to different people to make sure that you've got all different bases covered. There may be some things that you haven't thought about.
Okay, cool. David, I know you've been buzzing around in the chat, so what's the one lesson we need to take away from this?
I think that from the chat, they all agree with you in these ideas of the importance of causality. I think that that's the big lessons that we all learned today.
Okay, thanks. John, what's the one lesson we should take away from today's chat?
I really like Rania's point about the importance of human relationships being utterly critical to allowing us to share. So having not just data skills, but human skills too. And also the good old rule of thumb of a third for a third of your resources for data collection, a third for doing your data analysis, but critically a third of your resources for knowing your audience and how to present your data correctly to them and communicating it effectively.
Cool. Rania, what's the one thing we should take away from today?
Well, to be honest, I think it's been covered by everyone, but one thing to say is make sure your parameters are designed properly before you go into your actual analysis, because if you don't, then you'll get no results. So similar to what Claire was saying.
Okay, my takeaway is data is fun. GIS, seeing data in any form is fun. I have now turned into a data geek in the last 4 years in connecting nature, as well as a disruptor, as some of you might have heard me described yesterday. So I will carry on being disruptive, and I will carry on demanding that I get all my data geographically, because I want to play with maps. And just as a pointer, I saw a really cool thing on National Library of Scotland maps. They've now 3D'd some of their old maps. So if you really want to get lost in data, I suggest going there if you have a spare few minutes. But at the moment, come and join us in the innovation cafes. They're about to start. I'm about to hand over to Sean, but before I do, it's amazing how quickly an hour can go by. Hopefully everybody in this virtual room has enjoyed this chat, even though we've judded, even though I've thrown bits of paper around because I kept forgetting you could see everything I was doing. But at least you maybe laughed. If you're on the other side of the world, hopefully you've raised a glass or two of us. If you're over in the Americas, hopefully your breakfast was great. If you've been chomping through your lunch to get back, hopefully we have entertained, we have inspired, and we've been a little bit innovative in the way that we've talked about data. So we haven't bored you with graphs or show and tells or whatever. If we have inspired you, get in touch. You can connect to us all through all the stuff in the back of this platform that we're using. You can send us messages, just pull up our name, or you can email us at our work bases or tweet us, and we will try and come back to you and try and help you. We already have a connection because Adina and Claire want to talk a bit more because they've gone snap with some of the stuff that they're doing. And Rania and John are already talking because we're working on the Park Power. And David's just thinking, thank God I'm out of the chat and I can now relax and collapse in a heap. So we're all going to collapse because we managed to get through this without it freezing, without us juddering, without too many accidents. We're so delighted you joined us.
Hello everybody and welcome to this afternoon's session where art and business collide, imagining urban nature-based solutions for health and well-being. My name is Isabel Fletcher. I work for Horizon NUA. We're a not-for-profit foundation specialising in social innovation, research, capacity building and communications. We're based in Dublin and we're a partner in the Connecting Nature project. Where one of our roles has been to work with city municipalities and their wider stakeholders in identifying financing and business models for their nature-based solutions. Co-chairing the session with me today is Dr. Paulina Georgiou of the Sustainability Research Institute at the University of East London. Paulina is one of the main architects of the Sarajevo process, which is one of the two models we're going to be discussing in this afternoon's session. So, nature-based solutions can be a little bit intimidating, particularly if you're not familiar with the concept. Questions that spring to mind might include, what are they? How much do they cost? Who'll build them? Are they very high-tech? How are they managed? How much time do I have to commit if I'm a volunteer? Or what have they got to do with me in my job as a municipality finance officer?
Today we're going to present two collaborative techniques developed during the Connecting Nature project. Both offer an opportunity to demystify what can feel like a complex and intimidating process when thinking about how to use nature-based solutions. The Sarajevo process is an arts-based approach developed to capture the stories of nature in cities. The city of Sarajevo will share their experience of piloting it and engaging with the elements of the process, which involve creative encounters with the past, present, and future. The business model canvas can be described as another form of storytelling through creating a visual interpretation of the practical considerations needed to complete the business case for nature-based solutions. Houston Community Gardens, based in Glasgow, will share their experience of engaging with this approach and how it has helped them develop their nature-based solution. Finally, our partners for the city of Nicosia have used both tools. We will hear a comparative analysis from them on their experience of using both approaches to develop their nature-based solution. Before we delve much further into each tool and how it is used, let us introduce our panelists this afternoon and invite them to give you a short overview of their nature-based solution for health and well-being that they are delivering in their communities and across their cities.
Great, Paulina. Thank you and welcome to our panelists. So without further ado, I'm just going to pick on one of you to introduce yourselves. And Belma, you're first up.
Thank you very much. Greetings, Sarajevo. I'm Belma Pašić, working in Sarajevo Economic Region Development Agency, and we are one of the 29 partners within the Connecting Nature project. Thank you.
Nermina.
Hello, Nermina, working at the city of Sarajevo, and together with Belma, I'm participating in implementation of Connecting Nature project as part of the team from Sarajevo.
Super, thank you. You're very welcome. It's great to have you with us this afternoon, and we're going to say hello to Eleni from Cyprus.
Hi everyone. I'm Eleni Malikidou. I work for Nicosia Development Agency, proud partner of Connecting Nature project as a project coordinator. My background is in urban planning, regional development, and I did my master's in urban regeneration. Nicosia Development Agency is a public equivalent body, and its shareholders are the 9 municipalities of Nicosia district, the capital of Cyprus. So in few words, if I have time, about Nicosia's exemplar is that concerns the creation of an urban network of linked open and green spaces on a district level, using as a core the National Forest Park of Thalassa. Thank you.
Super, thanks. I feel like I'm in the Eurovision Song Contest here with all of these
Yeah,
people
exactly.
from all over. Glasgow.
Hi, I hope I don't talk too much for the introduction, but hi everyone, my name is Rachel McLaughlin and I work as the Community Activity Organiser for Alzheimer's Scotland based in Glasgow. Just a little background for those that are unfamiliar, Alzheimer's Scotland support people living with dementia and their carers throughout all stages in their journey with dementia. We actually have developed an established allotment group for all of our families, which has been grown in partnership with Glasgow City Council for the last 9 years. The allotment is within a walled community plot in Bellahouston Park alongside 8 other community projects. And actually, if anybody was on a couple of the previous sessions beforehand, we're actually in the same project alongside Richie in the Sacro group. So I was listening to that chat there. So it was a nice little sort of connection there. The gardeners at our group decide what they want to plant, what they wish to do, and we support the gardeners to take ownership in the space. And because our plot has been pretty much well established, we were invited to attend a workshop using the business model canvas for another project, a similar project within Glasgow.
Great, and we'll hear more from that in a while. Paulina.
Thanks, everyone. Just a quick word before we get into the presentations to say if you have any questions, comments, or observations, to please put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them at the end of the discussion, or the presentations, rather. So just to go into my own presentation now. Are the slides up there? Yep, thank you. So I'll start with a brief overview of the Sarajevo process. Everywhere elsewhere, we have elaborated more deeply on the methodologies and examples. But for today, I just want to give a brief description and allow the 2 cities to reflect on it from their side. What is the Sarajevo process? It is a co-creative, arts-based engagement process developed within the Connecting Nature project. Its name reflects its co-creative character as it was piloted and tested in Sarajevo in March 2020, exactly 1 year ago. It was then taken to Nicosia, where it went through a similar co-creative process, and it was delivered in September 2020. The nature of co-creation has meant that each time it was developed in collaboration with the cities to suit the needs and engage with the nature of each city. Both cities will have a chance to tell you about their experiences in a few minutes. The Sarajevo process uses a number of methods derived from the expertise of our core team, Dimitri Oxidis from Trinity College Dublin, Paula Vandergaard from UEL, and myself also from UEL. The methodology is designed to establish or re-establish connections with nature within cities. As each of the cities within the Connecting Nature project work towards their own nature-based solution exemplars, the process aims to revitalize connections to nature and provide a useful tool for engagement. Part of the process has also been tested in an online format to respond to the current circumstances and consider the role of nature during the time of COVID-19. The process invites creative encounters with the past, present, and future, providing space for imaginative and innovative storytelling by the cities themselves. The Sarajevo process is a guided voyage in time and space using the body as a vehicle. The methodology involves memory work, immersion in nature and ecotherapy, body mapping, and continuous embodied reflection. As an arts-based approach, the methods of the Sarajevo process include creative tools for expression, such as writing and drawing, as well as group work and discussions. As you can see from the image here, in Nicosia, we invited an illustrator to record the session as well, adding another layer to the creative outputs. We are currently considering how these creative outputs can be best utilized to maximize engagement and sustain the benefits of the process. We have found that the Sarajevo process is as much about human connection as it is about connecting with nature. Our pilot and testing have indicated that the process is at its most effective when all of the participants become comfortable and vulnerable, when relationships are strengthened through eating and walking together, and when the activities are processed in time and space. We therefore see the Sarajevo process as a 3-day transformative venture and look forward to delivering it in more places. If you'd like to hear any more about the Sarajevo process, please get in touch with myself or any of my colleagues, or we're happy to also talk in the chat. In the meantime, can I invite Belma and Nermina from Sarajevo to tell us about their experiences with the Sarajevo process?
Okay, I'm not sure. I think, do we have a technical issue here? We should have a video.
It might just be.
Hello, greetings from Sarajevo, and thank you for your interest and opportunity to present our work within the Sarajevo process. Nermina and Leila from the city of Sarajevo and Belma from Serda will share our work and importance of the process for us and our further activities. Our colleagues already explained how the process went, but what we would like to mention that the whole process was very private and emotional, but we worked in a small group and we shared it with the rest of the team. On the first day of the workshop, we did memory work. Each of us brought a photo and we told a story behind it. Not just a simple story, but also what it meant to us. On the second day of the workshop, prior to body mapping exercise, we visited Trebević mountain near Sarajevo and did ecotherapy and immersion in nature exercise. Main word describing this part of the day was mindfulness. Also, we felt relaxed and full of good energy. After ecotherapy and immersion in nature, we were dedicated to body mapping. Body mapping included our individual work where we presented our feelings, symbols related to the nature and what all that meant to us. On this slide, you can see all of our body maps, and although each of these is different, we all have something in common. Our next steps include implementation of this methodology in the exemplar we designed within the Connecting Nature project. Our ambition is to develop Green Garden, which will encourage community engagement, be a catalyst of intergenerational exchange and cooperation, and most importantly, provide a space place for learning, formal and informal. Its location is in Children's House in Sarajevo, with the size of approximately 200 square meters, surrounded by busy street and pedestrian lane next to the river. It will have multifunctional purposes, place to grow flowers and vegetables, to protect biodiversity, and for the children to provide a safe place to play. Sarajevo exemplar will be implemented in cooperation with Children's House to work with children and elderly people, but also with other target groups. We aim to create a sustainable model of the Green Garden, which will be replicable through the city and other areas in our country. Within the garden, we will include the Sarajevo process. The Sarajevo process for us represents great tool and methodology for involvement of various stakeholders in our exemplar. Our main aim is to bring nature into cities and connect with the nature, but also to create a model which will connect people again. That would be all from our side. Thank you for your kind attention, and we hope you enjoyed the presentation. Stay safe and all best from Sarajevo.
Great. Listen, thank you, Belma and Nermina, for that lovely short video of your experiences in using the Sarajevo process. And I can already see on the chat there's an awful lot of interest in the work that you've done, and also in the whole process. So now that we have actually, I suppose, whetted your appetite and stimulated your creative artistic senses, I want to turn our attention now to another tool which can be used when co-producing a nature-based solution, and that's the nature-based, the business model canvas for nature-based solutions, rather. What is it, and why should you complete one for your nature-based solution? But before I delve in too deeply, I just want to draw your attention to, I suppose, the European Commission definition for nature-based solutions, which are, solutions that are inspired and supported by nature, that are cost-effective and simultaneously provide environmental, social, and economic benefits and help build resilience. And just keep those in mind as I explain the business model canvas to you now. So as you can see on the screen, you can see the business model canvas template and our guidebook that has been developed alongside it. And quite simply, the business model canvas is really, it's another way to allow you to tell the story of your nature-based solution and to explain how the different elements work together to deliver value to the end user and how you could potentially make money from, or in some cases reduce costs and capture the value of what it is you're offering through your solution. But we're often asked the question, why would you use a business model canvas for a nature-based solution? And there are a number of reasons why. Firstly, perhaps as a communications tool, we've already talked a little bit about how people are unfamiliar with the concept of nature-based solutions. And the canvas actually provides a simple way of telling people what you're going to do, what you want to do and why you want to do it through the activities and the resources, who needs to be involved through the partners and the beneficiaries, and how you're going to make it happen. Okay, so that's really, through the value proposition and then looking at all the costs, etc. We use language, I suppose, that's widely understood by people from many different backgrounds. So we really do try to drill down and create a common language that people can then use to share with to share across and between stakeholders. It's a useful planning tool. It's a useful first step for individuals or groups in planning their implementation of their nature-based solution. And it helps everyone consider the basic building blocks to build a long-term sustainable project. The canvas can also be used to help identify new partners, because if you think, if you take and consider the value that the nature-based solution offers to different groups of people, and when you're identifying who those partners and potential beneficiaries might be, those people, those groups might actually be interested in getting involved in the planning, implementation and the long-term stewardship or management that we spoke so much about yesterday of your nature-based solution. It can help you explore new sources of finance, combining, if you take the reflections on what the value of the nature-based solution is, along with the identification of those key partners or beneficiaries, you could potentially identify new sources of perhaps capital funding, or perhaps identify partners who can assist with the funding of the ongoing costs or contribute to the cost reduction. So the nature-based solution business model canvas is really based on the three building blocks of the value proposition that you see here in the centre, key activities and key resources, which is around the value creation and delivery, and combining that with the partners and the beneficiaries, and then the value capture, where we look at the costs in great detail. But crucially, I think what sets it apart from the traditional business model canvas, I'm too fast there, is that we don't just look at the nature-based solution from the perspective of the end user. In line with that EC definition, we look at the nature-based solution through the lens of the environmental, social and the economic factors. Okay, consistent with that EC definition that I spoke about a few minutes ago. So, since the business model canvas for nature-based solutions was developed by Siobhan McQuaid of Trinity College, one of the Connecting Nature coordinator partner, we in Horizon Nua, along with Trinity, have delivered business model canvas workshops across all 10 of the Connecting Nature cities. Working with our colleagues and their internal colleagues across departments to help break down the silos and create that shared story of their nature-based solution. In addition, the business model canvas workshops, we've tailored them for delivery to community groups for smaller scale interventions, and external stakeholder workshops where we're demonstrating live nature-based solution scenarios that have been delivered at multiple events across Europe. Obviously, over the last year, our ability to deliver face-to-face workshops has been impacted, but the business model canvas and the guidebook is available to download online from the Connecting Nature website, and indeed has been downloaded over 150 times so far. The canvas and the guidebook are also available in Spanish, and we can provide introductory webinars to groups and communities and city municipalities who are looking to roll it out. So that was really just a whistle-stop tour of, I suppose, a more practical maybe approach to imagining and beginning to create and tell your story of your nature-based solution. I'm going to ask Rachel McLaughlin now to join me on stage. Rachel is with Drumchapel Community Garden, and Rachel took part in the the Business Model Canvas workshop in Glasgow last year. And I'm just waiting for Rachel to join me on stage.
Hello.
Here you are. Lovely to see you. How are you, Rachel?
I'm doing well.
I thought I was going to be asking and answering the questions there.
No, not at all. I'm still here. Unfortunately, don't have a lovely video to sort of showcase what we've sort of done, but hopefully I can describe as best I can with my words that you can get a nice visual of our experience from Bellahouston, but also from the workshop as well.
Great. Well, look, you did take part in that workshop, and that was delivered by Siobhan from Trinity College, who I know is watching and putting links up on the chat there. Tell us your experience about how you found it coming at the Business Model Canvas from I suppose an external stakeholder point of view.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm coming at it I'm based in the community. It's what I do. I'm a community practitioner, and my sole role is based on working with families in the neighbourhoods and stuff. So due to the success of our Bellahouston demonstration garden, I was invited to attend the session to share our experience to support the new nature-based project in the northwest of Glasgow, which is called the Grow Chapel project, obviously using the business model canvas. Must admit I hadn't heard anything about a model originally before the workshop, so I wasn't too sure what to expect, but I was really looking forward to seeing what was there to offer and sort of to connect with the other community projects as well. I'd also like to make a point just now as well that although our Bellahouston project was created before the workshop, actually during the workshop we found that the model was really useful for our own project, with a focus of constantly reviewing our own key partners and activities, and also the cost and revenue opportunities as well in order to adapt and sustain for our own future. And I feel that this shows that the model can be used as an original setup, but also for the advancement and sustainability for any of the existing projects. So I felt like that was quite a good thing from it. Our input into the workshop at the Grow Chapel project, it focused on what went well with our own Bellahouston allotment and what key resources we couldn't do the project without. From this, the emphasis was on the benefits of strong community partnership working and joint funding opportunities that the whole project could then benefit from. And I think that having the input from different community projects within these allotments allows these communities to work together in ways that they might never have done before. So an example of this is our group only meets once a week when we ever go down, but the other community projects support our gardeners by watering our plot, and there's just a general sharing mentality around all the projects. And this also relates to this year, where our families have been unable to attend their garden completely because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the groups that have been able to be on site have looked after our plots so that when we are able to meet up again, there's not a huge amount of cleanup for us when we eventually get down there. But I feel like that sort of got brought up as well, that it's able to see, sorry, I've missed a bit there.
No, you're fine. It's fine. Don't
Of course.
There's a little bit of a time lag. Sorry, Rachel. But can I ask you a question? Because you did the business model canvas, but has it changed your story, or has it helped you identify any new opportunities or new stakeholders or partners? Or
I think what it has done is drill home how important that community connection is with other projects. When we had the allotment, we never normally sort of used that allotment as a sole basis, or we were just solely working on our own. And I feel like that's the sort of strength that these allotment gardens have, that it is different types of community partners all working together for the same common goal. We might have different days that we go down, we might have different backgrounds, but we're all in this together and we're all sharing and we're all seeing the benefit of that. And not only do the families and all of the individuals coming along to these gardens and nature solutions as well, they get the benefit, but the neighbourhood does as well. That you can see the difference that having these allotment spaces here has in the overall community. So definitely, and I think that it just strengthens that bond that you have, and it sort of puts that value on that. Yeah, definitely.
Another question I have for you then, I suppose, thinking about it from more of a financial point of view, has it helped you kind of think about how you fund this garden and how you keep it going and the long-term sustainability of it.
Yeah, so that was definitely in the front of our mind with all of this, and especially with the Grow Chapel project, for a project that has been is new, and it's obviously we've been established for a good 9 years or so. And actually, when I started at the allotment, a lot of the sort of groundwork has already been put in place for that. So our sort of extra fundraising was coming in to sort of benefit and sort of change our space. So like we got extra funding to make the garden more dementia inclusive as well. And I know a lot of the other allotment plots were the same. And I think during the workshop, we kind of sort of like, it was moving, like it was sort of having that focus on joint funding applications as well, so that it's not just the individual plots that are having, like say Alzheimer's Scotland, we're not just having our like sort of fundraising applications or anything, we're getting help by Sandy at the council as well, we're getting help by a lot of other community initiatives that will sort of fund certain things going through, and it means that all these different community plots can sort of benefit from that in the long run.
Super. Listen, thanks for that really insightful, in-depth 5-minute contribution. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us this afternoon.
No, thank
Paulina,
you for having me.
Not at all, and we're going to probably have loads of questions for you now. Anyway, over to Paulina.
Hi, thank you so much. That was very interesting. Eleni has, they've experienced both of these collaborative methods. So we'd like to kind of invite Eleni from Nicosia to tell us a little bit about their experience of both methods.
Hi again. Well, both collaborative techniques that were applied in Nicosia were surprisingly useful and helpful in a very different way. I say surprisingly because as we were used, let's say, in applying more traditional techniques and methods in all stages of the projects we work on, and the fact that these two new for us innovative techniques helped us to move one step forward, have added value first on the further development of our professional team, broaden up our knowledge, and of course to the implementation of the project. Concerning business model canvas, it helped us in a more practical way, if that makes sense. It helped us to understand the structure and structure better our exemplar, to prioritize immediate actions, resources, to identify who the partners and involved actors will be in each phase, to set priorities for implementation of the tasks to be delivered. Also, it helped us to build up a common understanding, but also a common language in order to communicate more effectively as a team first, but also with the involved stakeholders and actors in each phase of the project. We really enjoyed the process, and after the session with Isabel, we felt like taking one step forward, as we were a bit confused and stuck on that time being on how to approach this very complicated exemplar, because we had the network, the wide plan, and then we had the smaller projects that were the parks. So it was really helpful. We after the application of BMC, we felt more confident as a team on how to proceed, on what was next, let's say. Concerning the Sarajevo process, the experience was very different. Even though at the beginning our team did not fully understand the reasons and the scope behind this exercise, during the process's development, we started realizing the benefits to gain in let's say, 2 dimensions. The first one concerned the implementation of the exemplar, as we had the chance to spend quality time as a team in the nature. And when I say nature, I mean the parks and locations we have identified and included in our exemplar, the places we were planning and we're planning to invest in through this project. And the second one is related on how our team may work together in a very different manner, how art and nature helped each one of us to unlock a new perspective and utilize our personal experiences and memories to approach and express in a fruitful way and to contribute in the overall team's tasks. As you, Paulina, very rightly pointed out during your visit in Nicosia, we have managed as a team by the end of the session to see our exemplar in a very different perspective with new eyes.
That's great. Thank you so much. Really interesting. So I think we're going to open up the discussion now slowly. So I'll just give Isabel some time to maybe collect some questions from the chat, and I'll start with a couple of questions. Is that okay?
Sure. That's fine.
So can I ask, because I know that the Sarajevo team has also experienced both approaches, so can I ask what you think the strengths and weaknesses are to either approach? Could you go first? I think it's Belma answering for Sarajevo right now, and then Mina.
Yeah, it's me.
Thank you.
Me again. Thank you for the question. It's quite interesting what you asked. From our perspective, what we can say that both processes provided us a new approach to various stakeholders. We had a tool how to work with them and to involve them, and how to provide active involvement of the stakeholders, and how to strengthen our team, which works within the project. And also this helped us to raise interest on project activities, especially during the definition of the exemplar, which will be implemented within the project. I have to say that business model canvas especially for us is a new way to define project and activities, as it provides comprehensive approach. And also it contributes to minimizing risks at the very beginning of the project defining, and it provides us also all the elements that we need to take care of within the definition and then later of the project implementation. As I said earlier, I have to say that Sarajevo process was really something very special for us, and I think that we will be ready to use it for our exemplar when we implement it.
Thank you. Eleni, was there something you'd like to add about the strengths and weaknesses of each of the processes?
To be honest, I have identified more strengths than weaknesses, and I want to focus on them.
That's great.
Concerning business model canvas, it helped us. It helped on building up a common understanding and a common language in order to communicate better throughout the planning and implementation phase of the project. And in our case, it was really helpful. Where the project was very demanding, it helped in structuring each phase and organizing all the tasks. On the other hand, Sarajevo process helped each member of the team to unlock hidden gems, let's say, of the brain, and approach in a very different way a project that the team works on.
That's lovely, thanks. Isabel, do we have any questions lined up, or should I continue?
Keep going. Lots of comments, lots of interest in the Sarajevo process. So I think you'll be getting lots of inquiries after, and we'll put up our contact details at the end. And I think we've already put up links to both the process and the business model canvas in the chat. So lots of interest in both just the process and people wanting to find out more about the webinar, so they can contact me directly afterwards, put something in the chat, or contact me through the summit about that. So I'm just still scrolling my way through the comments.
I'll keep going, and then we'll come back to you.
You keep going.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we know that the business model canvas works internally, helping to break down silos between departments and facilitating co-production with external stakeholders, and for nature-based business in developing their business model. So what opportunities do you feel the Sarajevo process presents to those who have tried it already? Belma, can I come to you?
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity to also answer this question. I think that provides us new opportunities. For example, it provides us a new approach to the different target groups. As you could see in our presentation, we intend to develop the example we will have intergenerational exchange. So we think that this process can be also applied in connecting different target groups, for example, children and elderly people. Also, the Sarajevo process will enable key stakeholders in our city to tell the story of the nature in our city. Also, it will provide us and make it easier to engage with the citizens, to hear their stories, which is important, and to create connection with the citizens within the city. And also it will enable us to design nature-based solutions which will address particular challenges in the city. In this way, we hope to contribute to solving issues that our city has. For example, we think that we will contribute to the minimizing air pollution, providing more green spaces within the urban city area, and so on.
Thank you. Eleni, did you have a response to the question?
Well, I agree with Belma. Most of it, I agree fully with Belma. What I can add is that Sarajevo process helped a team to unlock, as I said earlier, a new perspective on what is already been working on, for example, a project or a task, through memory, psychotherapy, and art in the nature, where other senses are activated and affect what brain is being processing. So it really helps to see a different, in a different way, what you are working on, even if it's a nature-based solution project or anything else you are working on.
Thank you.
I can jump in here now with some questions. Yeah. The questions are starting to arrive. Great positive comments. I'll feed those in later. Here's a question for the panel. Which should come first, the Sarajevo process or the business model canvas? Who wants to answer that one?
I can start. I have an idea. Well, I don't believe that each of the process can be applied in different, let's say, stages of the project. I strongly believe that these tools can be quite useful in several stages of the project, from the inception to planning, implementation, even monitoring phase. The application of these tools in each phase will add value in a different way. For example, if in the inception of a project, the Sarajevo method would be really helpful to brainstorm with the team and approach the idea with more freedom. On the other hand, if we use business model canvas during the inception phase of a project, we will help the team to structure the idea and move one solid step forward, if that makes sense.
Does any input from Sarajevo who've tried it twice? Or have also tried both models?
Yeah, I have to agree with the Eleni regarding her opinion on both processes. And what I also think that, as I said, the business model canvas is preferred to be completed at the beginning of planning activities, because in that way we can see what are the things that we have to fulfill, and so what are the dimensions within the project, also how to minimize risks, isolated monitoring, for instance, involvement of the key stakeholders and actors that can provide systematic support and institutional support, and also in the part where we can talk about financing projects and how to involve but actively involve all stakeholders which are related to our activities.
Okay, great. Rachel, popping a question to you now, because I know you have experience of the business model canvas from sort of a mature project point of view, and I think it's it's great to see that that can be used as it can be used as sort of any phase really, I suppose, or it can be applied at any phase. Your thoughts on the Sarajevo process from what you've heard and its applicability to the community that you work with, or the communities
Honestly,
that you're
like from the onset of your video as well, my initial thought was my families that I work with directly would love this. Like it really taps into, like, especially from our side of things where we work with individuals who are living with dementia, and a huge part of that is storytelling, and a huge part of that is also connecting them back into nature and back into their local communities, and it summarized everything that we also stand for. So actually, like, it actually made me feel quite excited. If that was another process that we could also sort of dip our toes in the water and see if that would work with us, because I know from our allotment side of things, we were hoping to adapt a couple of our spaces and stuff to make it more sort of sensory in a way, like with the gardening side, like aside things. And I think that the art led sort of connection there with nature would really tap into that. So yeah, it does sound like a wonderful project. I'm quite jealous you have managed to have that.
To a city near you soon.
Yes.
Another question, it might tie in a little bit, but what has been the panel's experience in having people who might be reluctant to access the nature-based solutions? I suppose really the Sarajevo process, maybe in terms of engaging people to draw on their experiences. What do you think? Is it a way to encourage people to participate, or is it a bit intimidatory?
Yeah, well, if I'm kind of responding for this question, I think the Sarajevo process has been mainly used so far in the city teams. So in the teams that are already engaging with nature. But I think it could provide a space for kind of an invitation for people to participate. And it is a process which I think, as I said in my presentation, it's a 3-day process. If you do the whole thing, and it's kind of leading people towards being more open and more vulnerable. And as Eleni said, there were examples of people who were kind of more reluctant to express themselves creatively, but it came out great. And I think by the end of the 3 days, they were engaging, and they were using creativity in ways where they didn't think was in them. So I think it just, if people are open to give it a go, there's opportunity there to open them up and to get the most of it. I don't know if any of the cities want to jump in.
I think Eleni described it perfectly when she said that it's really unlocking a new perspective. So that's really, even those who are reluctant, even we were reluctant at first, but it just opens up so many new findings and new discoveries. So I think it's a great model even for those who doubt the connection with nature.
Super, great. Yeah, I mean,
what would...
Go on, Belma.
Sorry, my voice is late. I just wanted to add that also, because Nermina told what she said, that also it strengthens connection between members of the team, which is really important. And I think that, for example, this even provided us better cooperation of the SERDA and the city of Sarajevo, not only because of using these tools, but I think it really contributed to be more open and to be more cooperative, and to work more, and to experiences and opinions and so on. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I don't. It's not you, Belma. There's a time lag on the thing, so we're talking over each other at times. Another question more related specifically to the business model canvas that's coming in, and this will apply to all of you that took part in this. Before you did the business model canvas, what did you fear most, and what did you think you would get out of it? That's kind of Rachel, I'll put you on the spot.
It's the fear of the unknown, isn't it? Like, because I think as well from our perspective, we've already had that a lot. Like, I know I keep saying that, but we already had our allotment sort of established, and it was really exciting to know that there was other plans in the work to sort of replicate a similar project to that. But then being asked to participate in it from I'm a community practitioner, so like from that side of things, it's like, what do you expect? What's going to be expected of myself, or like our experiences and stuff like that. And honestly, the workshop was so engaging. It was so friendly. It was such a nice way to see all different community partners all again working for the same common goal as well. And you end up leaving quite invigorated and quite excited about what you're actually talking about. And like, obviously the business model canvas in comparison to the art-based like model, like it does look very much like a business model canvas, but like it breaks it down into such simplistic ways and such building blocks that a big project then becomes more like sizable, and it becomes better down, like sort of easier to digest and easier to actually be like, actually we can do this, like there is going to be a solution for this and a way forward and stuff. So I definitely recommend it, even if you are a bit nervous about it.
Okay. And I think even in Sarajevo, because I came out to Sarajevo and we did the business model canvas, and within a matter of weeks you applied it to another exemplar, and I think it's fair to say,
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
you didn't need any guidance to do it. It was so you were able to take the practical application and run with it. Having done it once, you were able to apply it to a different scenario.
Yes, and I think it's important that during the workshop we went through the business model canvas step by step, which was a good approach, that we do it one part and then the other part, but all that in the final stage to connect and to see that every part of the business model canvas is related to each other and the same important, you know. So as we changed the first one, we could apply it immediately on the second one. And I have to say that at first we were a bit scared. Will we be able to do it, you know? But I think that we did it very successfully. And I think it's very useful now for us when we are approaching to the implementation of the example.
Okay. I have another question for you, kind of again related to the business model canvas, then I'll let you in, Paulina, because I think you want to ask something. In terms of breaking down silos, and Eleni, I'll target this one at you, in terms of communicating that story of your nature-based exemplar to other departments within the city municipality, how has it worked? Has it made life easier for you?
Yes, it really helped. First of all, in our team, because some of our members were, let's say, familiar with nature, but they understood the term, but there were people who were working in our team who were still confused of of the terminology. So it was really helpful for us to, as I earlier mentioned, to create this common language in the team first, in order to be able to communicate all the activities to all the departments we were working with. For example, the forest department, the Department of Environment, the people from the municipalities that we wanted to help us on applying all the plans and the actions we had. So it was very helpful, because we have managed to find a way on how to explain some things, because it was difficult from the team to pass the message to the other actors. So by understanding first our team what these nature-based solutions are and how we will communicate these terms and our project to the involved actors, this was really helpful in order to communicate it better, because we understood it better. We understood how to communicate it better. So yeah.
Super.
And
Great.
just to mention, I wanted to mention earlier because, regarding the business model canvas and Sarajevo process, that if COVID-19 allows us, we are planning to apply the business model canvas method for some of our individual projects. For example, Lurca Forest. In nature, we won't be able to apply Sarajevo process, but if we arrange, let's say, a visit at Thalassa Forest Park with the team of the close team of Nicosia first, in order to work on the business model canvas for Lurca Forest project, we wish that the memories from the Sarajevo process will come up and help to achieve, let's say, better results on business model canvas. We will combine, let's say,
combine the two.
I don't know if it will work. I'll tell you when we do.
You can be our first piloted case study on a joint. The art and business in action.
Yes.
Just some other comments coming in here. I just mentioned to you Jillian from Glasgow, who loved the business model canvas process. She's looking forward to learning about the Sarajevo process. She said, when we did the business model canvas on our open space strategy, her planning colleagues couldn't get a word in as the parks colleagues got really excited. Who else? There were other wonderful comments. Love the body mapping and the memory work. So important to understand the emotional attachment our environment stimulates within us. And I think so. And funny, if I can speak from a personal experience, I can almost relate to that in the at a recent Nature of Cities summit. We did the body mapping, or we did the Sarajevo process, a very tight, short workshop on it, and it was condensed workshop, that's the word, Paulina, and it evoked such a reaction. And we did it online, it was virtual, but honest to God, it stimulated something remote, almost awakened the senses in terms of, I'm not quite sure, I'm still kind of maybe processing it a month later as it did, but it really hits home. It really hits home in terms of that evocativeness.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Wait, we see art is so important to understand our emotional interdependency with nature. There you are. Do you know of any initiatives in this direction in Brazil or Latin America? I'm not sure whether that question applies to the business model canvas or to the Sarajevo process, but suffice to say that we do have, through the UrbanbyNature programme, and this may have been answered in the chat again, through the UrbanbyNature programme, we do have a hub in Brazil, so there are a series of webinars there, and certainly the business model canvas is covered in that one, and I'm sure Paulina and her colleagues will talk to the UrbanbyNature team in Italy around the Sarajevo process. Okay. Any other final comments before we wrap up the questions and answer session from any of our panelists? No, and there's actually one final question that's after coming up on the chat, just in case. Here's one. I'd like to ask the panelists, says Siobhan, how they think either process could be improved.
Mm-hmm. I'll take notes.
Who'd like to take it? You go with that one, Paulina.
I mean, I can only really talk about the business model canvas, but I mean, nothing's really coming to mind because it is such a positive experience that I had from the workshop and what we got from it and stuff like that, and how it does sort of connect you to a lot of different viewpoints as well as opening up different channels and stuff like that. But no, very, very positive.
Excellent. Okay. Well, look, I think thank you, everybody. I thank the panelists, thank the questions that are coming up. We're just going to start to wrap up this session now. And just a little, I suppose, Paulina and I were planning this workshop. We came up with a slide that we're going to share with you now around, I suppose, the similarities and perhaps differences between the Sarajevo process and the business model canvas. So, it's very much, I suppose, both of them can be identified as a co-production tool. And I don't think the business model canvas was designed actually to be a co-production tool from the outset, but it has certainly emerged into one. Both can facilitate storytelling too a bit. Personal experience central to the process, definitely in the Sarajevo process, and I have seen it brought into the business model canvas. I'd say it's less central to the process, but it's definitely there. Obviously, in terms of using nature, that's what the whole Sarajevo process is about, and using an arts-based tool. And with the business model canvas, I mean, it has been tested with multiple end users at this point. It's market ready. We know the Sarajevo process is at a much earlier stage of development, but will be approaching that market readiness level in the near future. I do think after this session this afternoon, we will be going back, I think, to add to this in terms of the similarities and the uniqueness of each approach as well. To add to this, and we will put this slide up on the Connecting Nature website as well, so people can come and visit and have a look. Just again to thank you. I think some of these links have already gone into the chat, and if not, I'll put them in there now. But obviously all the information is on the Connecting Nature website, and there are specific links then to the Sarajevo process and the business model canvas for those of you that are interested. So thank you to everybody for tuning in.
Olá a todos! Obrigada pela presença de vocês aqui hoje. Essa é a única sessão em português que está acontecendo no Summit e ficamos muito agradecidos de ter tanta gente presente aqui hoje do Brasil e de países que falam português. Eu gostaria de avisar que essa sessão está sendo gravada e eu gostaria de introduzir o nosso painel de hoje. Eu sou a Daniela Rise, sou Senior Officer de Soluções Baseadas na Natureza do ICLEI Europa, e hoje estamos no evento conjunto do ICLEI América do Sul e do ICLEI Europa. Eu gostaria de mais uma vez agradecer a todos aqui e gostaria de falar que esse painel de hoje terá a apresentação das cidades de Recife e de Fortaleza, que lograram incluir soluções baseadas na natureza nos seus planos de ação climática. E também teremos uma representante do CAF, do Banco de Desenvolvimento da América Latina, além do secretário executivo do ICLEI América do Sul, Rodrigo Perpétuo. Então eu fico muito feliz, a Sofia Picarelli também vai participar hoje, também do ICLEI América do Sul, e ela é gerente de Biodiversidade e Desenvolvimento Circular do ICLEI América do Sul. Então eu gostaria primeiramente de convidar o Rodrigo Perpétuo, nosso secretário executivo do ICLEI América do Sul, para abrir essa sessão de hoje. I would like to ask Mr. Rodrigo Perpétuo to speak now. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, Daniela. Boa tarde a todos e todas que prestigiam essa sessão em português desse congresso tão importante no âmbito do Connecting Nature, a cúpula de inovação. Queria destacar a importância da União Europeia no fomento à cooperação descentralizada com os governos locais da América Latina, e esse é um exemplo disso. Queria, em primeiro lugar, saudar os nossos convidados. Quero cumprimentar o secretário de Meio Ambiente e Sustentabilidade da cidade do Recife, Carlos Ribeiro. Quero cumprimentar a gerente de Sustentabilidade e Urbanismo da Prefeitura de Fortaleza, a Renata Farias, e também a Cecília Guerra, executiva principal de Desenvolvimento Sustentável, Inclusão e Mudanças Climáticas da CAF, o Banco de Desenvolvimento da América Latina. Quero saudar toda a equipe do ICLEI, ICLEI Europa, ICLEI América do Sul, mas essa rede tão grande que é o ICLEI, na pessoa da nossa gerente Sofia Picarelli, gerente de Biodiversidade e Desenvolvimento Circular do ICLEI América do Sul. Eu não quero me alongar nessa abertura, mas eu preciso destacar 3 pontos que me parecem muito importantes e significativos para nós nesse momento e nesse contexto. O primeiro deles é a conjuntura que nos cerca. Nós temos um ano tardio, 2021, com 2 conferências das partes, 2 COPs importantes, a COP de Biodiversidade, a realizar-se em outubro, na China, a COP do Clima, a realizar-se em novembro, em Glasgow, no Reino Unido, e todas elas nos chamando a um aumento de ambição nas nossas ações, por um lado, e compromissos, por outro lado, mas também na perspectiva da complementariedade entre as iniciativas vinculadas à mitigação e adaptação à crise climática. Esse é um movimento importante porque ele está permeado por essa pandemia tão trágica do Covid-19 e pela necessidade de se implementar, de fato, não só a perspectiva conceitual, mas muito pragmática da recuperação econômica verde, e a inspiração latino-americana, nesse caso, também vem do plano europeu. Esse é o primeiro aspecto. O segundo aspecto é exatamente esse do lugar das soluções baseadas na natureza como justamente o elemento de transversalidade da materialização das ações climáticas nas cidades, mas também na perspectiva de materializar também essa complementariedade entre ações de redução de emissões e ações que podem prover a melhor capacidade de resiliência e adaptação das cidades. Os exemplos de Recife e de Fortaleza são realmente muito educativos, muito elucidativos da forma como isso pode se dar na perspectiva do plano de ação climática e, a partir dele, integrando-se aos instrumentos consagrados de gestão urbana ou urbanística das cidades, dos municípios. Esses planos estão colocados a partir de eixos que se complementam, como, por exemplo, energia, saneamento, mobilidade, resiliência, e o que vocês vão ver são propostas e compromissos com medidas muito assertivas que colocam na vanguarda essas duas capitais de estados nordestinos importantes no contexto brasileiro, Recife e Fortaleza. Desejo a todos, portanto, um excelente seminário e que a gente possa conhecer em detalhes e se inspirar nesse movimento tão profícuo e tão interessante protagonizado por essas duas cidades. Muito obrigado.
Obrigada, Rodrigo. Obrigada, Rodrigo, pela abertura e pela contextualização dessa sessão hoje. E eu gostaria agora de passar a palavra a Carlos Ribeiro, o secretário de Meio Ambiente e Sustentabilidade da cidade de Recife. Now I would like to ask Mr. Carlos Ribeiro to speak. Thank you.
Obrigado, Daniela. Quero agradecer inicialmente ao convite. Estamos muito felizes em participar desse evento fantástico, né? Um evento que está trazendo aí tantas discussões importantes. Eu acabei de assistir também aí de vocês a uma palestra, essa última discussão que foi feita, muito interessante. Eu quero saudar aí a Renata, né, nossa companheira aí de hoje, saudar Rodrigo Perpétuo, nosso parceiro aqui em Recife, do ICLEI, e é isso, né? Então vamos lá para fazer essa nossa discussão, essa introdução aqui no tema da solução baseada na natureza. Assim, para fazer essa contextualização dessa temática de solução baseadas na natureza, eu queria dizer que ela, de fato, aqui em Recife, ela iniciou-se com todo esse processo dessa questão da temática das mudanças climáticas, né? A gente teve um longo período aí, mais notadamente no ano de 2013, quando a cidade do Recife se dedicou mais à questão das mudanças climáticas. E, a partir dali, ela vem fazendo uma construção de conhecimento, uma construção de estudos, uma construção de diagnósticos, que esse conjunto de obra ela traz todo esse levantamento das características e do conhecimento dessa nossa condição ambiental aqui da cidade, né? Então, é muito importante esse início de processo, né? Você ter todo esse conhecimento dessas características da nossa terra, do nosso território. E, principalmente, esses estudos, esses instrumentos e diagnósticos sejam feitos de uma forma participativa e de grande discussão com a sociedade. Então, de modo que haja esse expresso sentimento, essa expressa vontade da sociedade em se manifestar sobre o que ela pensa para a cidade no momento atual e do que ela imagina para o futuro. Então, nesse contexto, essa participação social na criação desses instrumentos é muito importante. Isso aí eu gosto de destacar bastante, né? Então, Recife, de fato, a gente seguiu esse caminho com a realização de todos os inventários até agora, inventários de emissão de gases de efeito estufa, passamos pela elaboração do plano de enfrentamento a mudanças climáticas, fizemos também uma parte normativa importante que é necessário você ter, né, a inclusão da política municipal de enfrentamento à mudança climática. A gente fez isso também lá por volta do ano de 2014. Então, foi necessário a gente fazer toda essa construção de conhecimentos e normativas e participação social. Em paralelo, toda essa construção de diagnóstico e de normativa, o Recife também desenvolveu alguns projetos, a exemplo do projeto Parque Capibaribe, que é um projeto que ele tem uma simbologia muito importante, porque o projeto Capibaribe ele é o resgate da cidade com um elemento muito simbólico para ela, que é o nosso principal rio que corta a cidade, o rio Capibaribe. Então, dentro desse projeto, há todo um resgate de situações e elementos para tornar esse rio, dar o retorno, tornar ele de volta para a sociedade fazer uso dele, as pessoas fazerem uso do rio. E outro projeto que a gente também desenvolveu em paralelo com todo esse processo de conhecimento e de diagnóstico diz respeito a nossas unidades de conservação, né? Nós temos 25 unidades de conservação que ocupam 38% do nosso território municipal. Então, é uma coisa muito abrangente, muito importante. E por que tudo isso tem a ver aí com a questão das soluções baseadas na natureza e todo esse arcabouço legal, normativos e de programas, né? Porque a partir desses projetos e desses conhecimentos, toda essa informação gerada ela não é perdida, ela está na consciência da sociedade. E na própria construção do Plano Local de Ação Climática, que é o estágio onde Recife está hoje, né? Ele construiu o Plano Local de Ação Climática. Naturalmente, tudo isso foi recepcionado também pelo PLAC. O PLAC também teve uma participação social e de discussão grande. E eles casam, né? Esses instrumentos e essas coisas, elas se casam. E hoje a gente tem um PLAC também com essa recepção de todo esse material levantado e toda essas experiências trazidas também e incorporadas no nosso Plano Local de Ação Climática. Ou seja, esse contexto nos remete a essa necessidade de ter feito toda essa discussão com a sociedade, né? Ter tido essa contribuição social efetiva. Isso é um lado altamente positivo, para que esse plano local, ele de fato represente uma necessidade, uma opinião e um firmamento das ideias da sociedade. De modo que temos no nosso PLAC várias ações. O nosso PLAC ele recepcionou, ele está lá como um principal dos princípios, né, um basilar, as soluções baseadas na natureza. Todas essas informações, essas participações conectadas. Entendemos também que o PLAC, com a solução baseada na natureza, ele ainda precisa, a gente já tem lá várias ações, várias medidas, projetos sinalizados, mas a gente acha que eles também ainda precisam de mais algumas etapas, não é finalizado aí com o PLAC, nem com a execução das medidas das soluções baseadas na natureza. A gente precisa também atribuir aí mais algumas etapas de monitoramento, de aferição desses resultados das soluções baseadas na natureza. Então, nesse sentido de a gente ter ainda mais algumas etapas do PLAC e das soluções baseadas na natureza. Era esse contexto que eu queria colocar, deixar aqui para a gente iniciar nosso debate e nossa discussão. Obrigado.
Obrigada, muito obrigada, Carlos, pela sua apresentação e que a experiência de Recife possa ser inspiradora para outras cidades, né? E obrigada por você também frisar a importância do monitoramento, né? Da gente juntar evidências das soluções baseadas na natureza. Eu gostaria agora de apresentar a Renata Farias, gerente de sustentabilidade da Secretaria Municipal de Urbanismo e Meio Ambiente da cidade de Fortaleza. Seja muito bem-vinda, Renata.
Muito obrigada. Queria primeiramente agradecer, né, uma honra participar dessa troca aqui no Connecting Nature. Fortaleza está aí traçando um percurso, inclusive junto ao ICLE, né, desde 2013, eu acho que o Plano Local de Ação Climática é um passo, né, desse percurso, que tem muito desenvolvimento intelectual, tem apoio no desenvolvimento de regulamentações, políticas, né, e nosso caminho em direção a uma cidade mais resiliente. E a gente tem uma política de desenvolvimento, né, um plano de baixo carbono, mas para o contexto de soluções baseadas na natureza, no PLAC, eu acho importante citar a nossa política municipal do meio ambiente, porque ela é pautada na integração entre os ambientes natural e o ambiente construído no desenvolvimento socioeconômico e ambiental. E uma das ferramentas principais dela é a estruturação de uma rede de sistemas naturais. Fortaleza tem bens naturais muito distribuídos no território da cidade. Então, as praças, parques, áreas verdes, entornos de recursos hídricos foram formalizados para se manter a patrimônio público, e estamos no processo de qualificar esses espaços e criar conexões entre eles, né, para fortalecer e tangibilizar essa rede, né, pouco a pouco, a cada projeto, a cada plano de manejo, e sedimentando isso. Contextualizei isso porque eu acho que é importante para contextualizar a questão como a gente trabalha soluções baseadas na natureza. E aí, durante esse percurso, né, de 2013 para cá, o apoio institucional foi uma coisa muito importante. Em 2015, a gente tinha um plano de baixo carbono, a gente evoluiu esse plano tanto a nível de ambição das propostas das reduções, como nas estratégias de governança, e entregou com um projeto UrbanLed 2 com o ICLE, né, o Plano Local de Ação Climática de Fortaleza. Mas, de apoio institucional também, a gente entregou recentemente nosso índice de vulnerabilidade às mudanças climáticas, que foi construído dentro do projeto Cidades e Câmbio Climático, viabilizado pela CAF, né, e que é um instrumento de diagnóstico muito importante para a gente. E aí, nessa construção também, outra coisa que foi importante foi utilizar a instância de participação social do ForClima, né, o Fórum do Clima, para ficar alinhando metas, ações planejadas, legislação existente, debate de pauta, e principalmente diálogo com gestores de diferentes instituições e secretarias, para validar e verificar as possibilidades, né? Construir em conjunto para as questões conseguirem englobar diversas pautas municipais. São os 3 pontos assim relevantes na construção do PLAC. A gente definiu, né, foram definidos 3 princípios para o PLAC de Fortaleza: justiça climática, soluções baseadas na natureza e economia verde. E essa questão de espelhar dinâmicas que já ocorrem na natureza para desenvolver soluções mais sustentáveis para o manejo dos bens naturais tem tudo a ver, né, com a proposta de integração entre o ambiente natural e construído. Quando a gente fala de soluções sustentáveis e, né, sustentabilidade no serviço público e na questão de infraestrutura, parece que se esquece que o conceito de sustentabilidade vem da capacidade de sustentar determinadas condições. E é impressionante perceber como a solução sustentável pode contribuir para a sua própria manutenção, né? A natureza ela já tem dinâmicas de equilíbrio e pode nos ensinar, né, a abandonar diversas soluções de manejo e de infraestrutura que a gente vem adotando historicamente e que tentam brigar contra a natureza no lugar de erguer a vela e velejar conforme o vento, né? E aí, aqui em Fortaleza, a gente está viabilizando implantar esse tipo de implantação por financiamento de programas. A gente tem, por exemplo, o programa Fortaleza Cidade Sustentável, que ele é praticamente o nosso laboratório de gestão integrada dos bens naturais, de espaços públicos. Ele é, em parte, financiado pelo Banco Mundial. E nele está contido, no Fortaleza Cidade Sustentável, está contido as obras de requalificação do Parque Raquel de Queiroz, que é um parque linear, que tem 10 quilômetros de extensão, né? E aí uma revitalização grande em uma área periférica, em que foram utilizadas, foram feitas wetlands, né? Foram colocadas vegetações filtrantes, foi determinada a zona alagável, e foi uma novidade, assim, né? Uma obra tão grande, que tem alguns trechos já em obra, outros trechos em projeto, mas num planejamento desse porte conseguir aplicar, né, essas estratégias. E a gente tem também tentado viabilizar através de operações urbanas consorciadas. E aí eu vou citar o exemplo de um parque da Foz do Riacho Maceió, que também fizemos uso de vegetação filtrante, mas fizemos também o uso do gabião como substituição àquela contenção de concreto, né, para reduzir as problemáticas de alagamento. E tem dado certo, né? E é uma solução que a diferença de custo talvez não seja tão grande, mas a diferença de problemáticas depois, né, de manutenção depois, é algo que vale muito a pena implementar. Então, eu acho que para a gente enfrentar esse desafio de implantar o nosso planejamento, que a gente pode fazer nos munir, né, dos fatos, dos dados e iniciar o diálogo para quantificar esses benefícios das soluções baseadas na natureza, nas diversas frentes em que ela traz benefícios, né? O que é relevante como benefício para um, talvez não seja para outro. E aí é necessário a gente colocar nos nossos editais, cobrar, desenvolver estratégias junto com quem executa os projetos, o diálogo com as concessionárias de serviço e identificar ações e medidas em diferentes pastas municipais que possam ser integradas entre si para fortalecer os projetos. É com esse resumo que eu inicio, né, nosso debate. Muito obrigada.
Agradeço muito, Renata, a sua apresentação, né? Muito interessante ouvir a experiência de Fortaleza. Obrigada por você evidenciar a importância de instrumentos de diagnóstico, né? Que você comentou no começo, e também falar da questão social, né? E citar os 3 pilares do plano que vocês estruturaram, né? Em torno de justiça climática, soluções baseadas na natureza e também economia verde. Muito obrigada. Gostaria agora de apresentar a Cecília Guerra, que é a executiva principal da Diretoria de Sustentabilidade, Inclusão e Mudanças do Clima do CAF. Seja muito bem-vinda, Cecília.
Boa tarde a todos e todas. Primeiro que tudo, agradecendo esse privilégio de estar com vocês hoje, a equipe da ICLEI, Rodrigo, Daniela, Vitor, a Sofia, que nós temos convivido bastante nesses últimos tempos, e dar os meus cumprimentos ao Carlos e à Renata, com essas 2 cidades amigas, irmãs, e que a CAF tem, de alguma maneira, apoiado direto ou indiretamente, e eu acho que isso faz a nossa conversa de hoje um pouco mais leve, né? E eu só queria reiterar o compromisso da CAF de apoiar os nossos países sócios, né, dentro desse processo de cumprir a sua missão de promover um desenvolvimento sustentável, baixo em carbono e resiliente a mudanças climáticas, e com isso, desde a nossa vice-presidência de desenvolvimento sustentável, a direção de sustentabilidade, inclusão e mudanças climáticas, e particularmente dentro essa coordenação de negócios verdes, onde eu estou né, ubicada, e com o qual eu tenho a possibilidade de introduzir, incorporar e de alguma maneira, dar valor ao capital natural que tem as cidades aqui no Brasil e América Latina em geral, uma vez que, por exemplo, no Brasil, nós somos conhecidos como o Banco das Cidades, e não é uma forma de chamar CAF leve, é realmente um compromisso da CAF nesse sentido, através, particularmente, dos nossos programas e ações, né? E queria só pontualizar algumas delas, como a iniciativa de cidades com futuro, onde se procura ter um espaço de interação e desenvolvimento de modelos mais inclusivos socialmente e mais que procuram mais a búsqueda de produtividade dentro do espaço urbano. Nós também temos a Agenda Verde, né, que promove também economia sustentável e resiliente, e onde se encaixam os nossos programas de biodiversidade de florestas, que realmente aqui no Brasil tem feito grandes aportes. A CAF também tem algumas outras agendas, né? Tem agenda de águas, tem agenda, agenda educativa, agenda de saúde, que transversalizam todo esse processo de apoio que a CAF dá aos países, em particular aqui no Brasil, que é a nossa responsabilidade atual. Alguns dados interessantes que eu queria compartilhar com vocês é que para o ano 2020 nós aprovamos em torno de 3.300 milhões de dólares em financiamento verde dentro das nossas operações de crédito, o que representa um 23,4% de carteira verde, segundo os índices do Clube de Banco de Desenvolvimento Internacional. Isso não é pouco, é um investimento muito grande, é uma decisão das cidades que querem fazer esse investimento nessas questões, e esse investimento é dividido em ações de mitigação, adaptação climática e de valoração de capital natural, de soluções baseadas na natureza. Então, nós temos uma carteira privilegiada, eu diria, aqui no Brasil, nesse sentido, e também gostaria de sinalizar que a CAF, esse ano, nós aprovamos mais de 1.250 milhões de dólares para a ativação da América Latina no mercado europeu. O ano passado nós aprovamos a emissão de bônus verdes pela ordem de 750 milhões de dólares, e eu acho que é um conjunto de ações onde a CAF está promovendo que os nossos países sócios, que são 19 países hoje, com mais de 13 escritórios espalhados neles, o que dá à CAF uma permeabilidade muito grande na América Latina e, portanto, pode compartilhar todas essas experiências e esse know-how no trabalho com a cidade. É importante que a gente seja conhecido como uma organização que se preocupa pelo desenvolvimento dos seus países, mas não só essa preocupação per se, mas que seja sustentável e que possamos ajudar os nossos países a que eles possam, pela sua vez, cumprir com os compromissos climáticos e ambientais internacionais, e particularmente com a Agenda 2030. Eu queria fazer só essa contextualização do que é a CAF e por que nós estamos hoje aqui com vocês, e particularmente porque Recife e Fortaleza são exemplos dessa colaboração e desse trabalho mútuo e confiado. E confiança eu acho que é uma palavra-chave nesse contexto todo, e mais ainda com o nosso sócio estratégico, ICLEI, com quem nós temos uma agenda muito interessante e muito importante para compartilhar. Então, eu fico por aqui e espero muitas perguntas. Obrigada.
Obrigada, muito obrigada pela sua apresentação, Cecília, e por mencionar a CAF como banco das cidades, né? Evidenciando os programas de biodiversidade, de florestas, o apoio do banco às agendas da água, da educação, que no fim são todos temas que estão muito relacionados às soluções baseadas na natureza, né? E também, obrigada por você evidenciar a questão da confiança, né? Que estabelecer essa confiança entre o banco, as cidades, esse trabalho conjunto, né? Que não se dá assim do dia para a noite, né? É um trabalho que a gente vai construindo dia a dia, né? Ao longo dos meses e tudo para ter aí resultados contundentes. Obrigada. Eu gostaria agora de convidar todos os panelistas que a gente já ouviu hoje, né, para uma sessão de perguntas. Os participantes podem enviar, os participantes que estão ouvindo a gente, podem enviar perguntas também pelo chat. E eu passo, então, a palavra a Sofia Picarelli, minha colega do ICLEI América do Sul, que ela é gerente de biodiversidade e desenvolvimento circular do ICLEI, e ela vai moderar o debate que a gente vai começar agora com os panelistas e aprofundar a questão sobre as SBN no painel de hoje. Obrigada.
Obrigada, Dani. Boa tarde a todas e a todos. Um prazer estar aqui, podendo compartilhar esse momento com vocês. Eu acho que, antes só da gente começar a reforçar, né, a importância, né, também do projeto Connecting Nature e do programa UrbanbyNature, que permite essa parceria, né, tão estratégica entre regiões, né, então, entre Europa e Brasil, podendo engajar aí uma série de atores, instituições que estão entendendo, né, a relevância dessa pauta e buscando caminhos para apoiar as cidades nessa implementação. Então, reforçar aqui também nosso agradecimento, né, ao ICLEI Europa, especialmente a Dani, que é nossa grande parceira aí nessa caminhada e vem nos apoiando nessa grande construção colaborativa aqui na região. E a gente fica muito feliz, né, em ter esse momento onde, né, duas cidades brasileiras aqui, Recife e Fortaleza, compartilham suas experiências, né, cidades que já vêm trabalhando, né, com o ICLEI já há bastante tempo, em que a gente, né, consegue realmente ver agora como que as coisas vão avançando e também enxergam, né, essa necessidade de cada vez mais linkarem as agendas, né? Então, como a Cecília também comenta, né, esse olhar de toda essa lógica mais macro do desenvolvimento, o quanto clima e biodiversidade podem e devem caminhar juntos, e, né, o quanto que essa lógica dos planos locais de ação climática permitem isso. A gente vê que várias outras cidades que estão revisando ou atualizando os seus planos locais de ação climática, né, aqui na região, América do Sul, América Latina, mas também globalmente, estão buscando esse caminho. Então, né, esperamos que também seja, além de uma tendência, uma realidade que seja refletida mesmo no dia a dia das cidades. E aí, para começar a nossa conversa, né, eu acho que tendo aqui, então, representantes das cidades, mas também, né, da CAF, queria talvez ouvir um pouco de cada um a percepção, né, de como que a gente constrói realmente esse caminho de implementação, né? Por um lado, a cidade, com esse papel, né, de planejar, de instituir os instrumentos, né, de regulamentação, de viabilização da implementação, a CAF, né, como um grande financiador que bota na mesa de forma muito clara esses critérios, né, climáticos, ambientais e também, né, de biodiversidade, para que sejam incorporados mesmo no desenho, né, dos projetos e em todas essas diretrizes, né, para a busca desse financiamento. Mas, por outro lado, a gente também vai ter a lógica dos prestadores de serviço, né, dos fornecedores dessas tecnologias, dessas práticas, né, de implementação das soluções baseadas na natureza, que é um ponto que o projeto Connecting Nature também trabalha de maneira muito forte de fazer essa ponte, né, entre quem quer fazer e quem oferece esse tipo de prestação de serviço. Então, acho que eu ouvi um pouco de vocês, né, diante da perspectiva aí do papel de cada um, como é que vocês enxergam, né, caminhos aí para fortalecer essas pontes. Aí eu deixo, talvez, se o secretário quiser começar, e aí a gente vai para CAF e depois para Fortaleza.
Sabe, posso começar.
Então,
por favor.
Eu?
Sim.
Pode ir, Renato.
Tá, certo. É porque deu uma travada aqui, desculpa. Que Fortaleza começou investindo muito no arcabouço legal, né? Se repete muito, tem um legislativo que em base, né, na hora que os técnicos estão conversando ou propondo, ou que se esteja trabalhando, né, tem uma referência legal para buscar, né, é meio que o chão, né? A gente está nesse momento agora em Fortaleza que a gente entregou 3 documentos que têm relação com planejamento sustentável, né? A gente entregou o Plano Local de Ação Climática, a gente também o Índice de Vulnerabilidade, que tem dentro dele um plano de adaptação, e a gente também entregou um plano de caminhabilidade. E a nossa estratégia está sendo unir para conquistar, na verdade, né? O contrário, a gente está tentando integrar o máximo possível as questões que têm interseção e usar isso para dar mais força para elas e conseguir dar mais força para elas irem para frente. E a outra coisa que a gente tem tentado fazer é fazer o máximo de questões de empatia dentro do poder público, para incluir mais de uma, na pauta de mais de uma secretaria, para estar na agenda, né, melhor distribuído nas nossas agendas. Aí, assim, a gente consegue colocar mais nos editais, ter os nossos objetivos mais claros, né? Decidir onde é que a gente vai apostar. Eu acho que é esse o momento que Fortaleza está nessa questão de tentar unir isso e fortalecer para botar para frente nas diferentes formas, né, e possibilidades existentes.
Legal, Renata. Secretário, se quiser também contribuir agora.
Pois não. Bom, Recife está num momento de ter seu plaque, né? Ele foi finalizado em 2020. Ele também tem como eixo e como base os três pilares, né, da justiça climática, as soluções baseadas na natureza e na economia verde, distribuído em 4 eixos. Né, o eixo de energia, o eixo do saneamento, da mobilidade e da resiliência. Mas hoje eu digo que Recife está no momento de consolidar e de confirmar esse compromisso do PLAC, que foi de 2020, sobre a gestão de uma estrutura administrativa coordenada por um prefeito, que foi sucedido. Hoje tem um novo prefeito e uma nova gestão. Então, eu acho que esse compromisso reafirmado na nossa gestão, na nova gestão, é absolutamente importante. Como Cecília tocou num ponto que eu achei chave, a questão da confiança. Isso aqui, para mim, o PLAC e toda a temática, ela não é uma temática de gestão, é uma temática de planejamento que perpassa toda essa rotação de gestões públicas aqui, né? Então, essa foi uma grande preocupação do início do ano, que nós conseguimos confirmar esse compromisso com a atual gestão, mas isso não basta, né? A gente precisa que esse compromisso seja confirmado e que ele seja absorvido transversalmente por toda a estrutura administrativa, ou seja, todas as secretarias, porque todas as metas do PLAC, elas perpassam todas as administrativas. Secretaria de Finanças, Secretaria de Planejamento, Secretaria de Mulher. Então, a gente tem metas e tem ações que estão lá, permeadas em toda a estrutura da Secretaria. Então, essa preocupação inicial aqui do município, da nossa gestão, foi essa. Ó, vamos aterrissar o PLAC no quadro administrativo atual. E uma vez aterrissado, que eu até parabenizo dessa nova gestão que absorveu o PLAC, a gente estaria aí numa segunda etapa que é da realidade mesmo, né? Nós temos aqui alguns projetos pilotos. Eu vi o projeto já está sendo já projetado, ele está no início de execução, um projeto de jardim filtrante para tendo como corpo receptor o rio Capibaribe, por isso que eu falei no início aí do projeto do rio Capibaribe. Então, e como eu falei dessa relação, né, dessa construção que vem desde 2013, ela tem que dialogar com a sequência de projetos. Não pode a gente abandonar um projeto iniciado lá. Então, todas essas experiências, elas precisam estar conversadas, elas precisam ter essa continuidade. Então, também essa questão da efetivação ou de tirar o PLAC do papel, ele passa muito por essa realização de projetos pilotos, e eu acho que é isso que a gente está buscando. Você tem uma ideia, esse projeto piloto, só a concepção dele, do jardim filtrante, em uma fala que eu vou falar com algum grupo de pessoas aqui do Recife, já demonstrou interesse de iniciativas privadas em assumir, em querer fazer dentro da terra dele. Então, acho que o projeto piloto ele traz essa grande importância, né, de ver uma coisa sendo executada, da sociedade ver que aquilo de fato acontece. Então, acho fundamental nós termos os projetos pilotos em execução, em várias outras iniciativas também. A gente tem projeto piloto aí com a questão de replantio, de espécies nativas, de manguezal, né, um bioma tão típico aqui para nós, eu acho que Fortaleza também tem. Enfim, eu acho que projeto piloto é uma questão importante. Outra coisa que eu acho que é importantíssima da cidade ter é o banco de projetos também, né? Justamente para que você possa chamar aí parceiros, as redes de financiamento, o próprio CAF aí, né? Eu acho que é importantíssimo a cidade ter um banco de projetos para poder fazer essa captação e poder fazer tirar de fato do papel. E, por fim, que foi mencionado também, eu acho que é importante essa relação, ou esse conhecimento, ou a construção dessa rede de conhecimento, de soluções baseadas na natureza, né? Por exemplo, o nosso projeto piloto, esse know-how, ele está sendo produzido por uma equipe lá de São Paulo. Então, é preciso que a gente tenha essa rede, a gente tenha essa parceria de quem está executando, junto com nós da cidade, que temos a oferta, né, de projetos, enfim. Eu acho que esse cenário, essa eu queria deixar aqui como comentário também.
Muito obrigada, Carlos. Acho que esse ponto realmente da gente começar a buscar essa expertise em loco é o que a gente quer, né, para que realmente as técnicas, né, os serviços de implementação, mas principalmente de manutenção dessas novas estruturas, né, ou das novas medidas aí com esses princípios de soluções baseadas na natureza, possam ser, né, cada vez mais adaptados e adequados às questões locais, né, então, e que criem também essa identidade, né, com questões sociais também do local, né, para que seja parte realmente do dia a dia do cidadão e da cidadã. Então, muito legal. E aí, Cecília, também, se você puder fazer os comentários também sobre, né, esse link entre demandas e ofertas, né, dessas soluções baseadas na natureza, também seria legal. Só vou pedir também para verificarem, só deixarem os microfones fechados enquanto a gente não estiver falando. Obrigada.
Tá, não, eu concordo totalmente tanto com Renata, com Carlos e com você mesma. Tem que estar preparado, né? Às vezes não é uma questão de não ter financiamento, a questão pode ser muitas vezes que a gente não está preparado para que aquilo que a gente quer seja uma realidade. Então, nós temos que ter muito cuidado com o que a gente pede, porque pode ser que aconteça. Então, temos que estar preparados. Eu acho que esse grau de planejamento, de amadurecimento, tanto que tem Recife quanto Fortaleza, nós, CAF, tivemos a oportunidade de acompanhar. Então, desde um primeiro momento, por exemplo, quando nós estamos desenvolvendo em Fortaleza o programa DRENURB, foi uma decisão da Secretaria de Meio Ambiente, naquele momento, e Secretaria de Infraestrutura, de investir, por exemplo, em ações verdes que não estavam contempladas dentro da operação de crédito, mas que pela diferença cambiária do dólar, né, que a gente empresta em essa moeda, foi possível fazer várias ações, várias intervenções que, digamos, numa maneira muito superficial, esverdearam o programa. Fora disso, continuamente, quando a CAF faz uma estruturação ou faz uma atenção a uma solicitação de algum prefeito ou prefeita que venha com alguma intenção de querer financiamento, é chave a participação, por exemplo, da gente que é da área mais ambiental e social. Por quê? Porque, às vezes, os prefeitos não sabem que instituições financeiras internacionais podem financiar essas ações. Então, a partir disso, dentro do ano 2020, nós tivemos umas aprovações de créditos que têm componentes de soluções baseadas na natureza, como o próprio financiamento que eles solicitam. Então, isso faz diferença, porque a questão é quem vai fazer tudo isso? E aí entra a nossa aliança estratégica com o ICLEI, com outras organizações, onde a gente não se relaciona diretamente com essas organizações, mas através ou por meio dos prefeitos. Então, eles já estão recebendo esse apoio, né? Então, eu acho que isso é uma relação muito interessante. Por quê? Porque seria muito fácil para a CAF contratar esses prestadores de serviços e impor aos nossos clientes. E essa não é a nossa estratégia. A nossa estratégia é o cliente precisa de alguma coisa, solicita para a CAF revisa essa demanda, se é possível, a gente tem as cooperações técnicas da própria CAF, a gente tem as linhas de financiamento que vêm de fundos de terceiro, como a AFD, KfW e outras, a gente tem próprias linhas de financiamento próprias da CAF, então a gente analisa internamente como a melhor maneira de apoiar esse cliente que vem com essa necessidade. E você não tem ideia da quantidade de prefeituras, clientes nossos, que procuram fazer isso. Então, por exemplo, nós temos nessas últimas aprovações, 80%, 90% dessas aprovações incluíram, por exemplo, os estudos climáticos de linha de base. Por quê? CAF, como agência implementadora dos fundos verdes internacionais, o GCF, o GEF, o Fundo de Adaptação, eles têm pré-requisitos, né? Eles precisam, né? Quando você apresenta uma proposta que leva um tempo também, né? E tem critérios muito rígidos de aprovação, precisam de linhas de base. Então, muitas dessas cidades não têm linha de base. Então, a gente tenta sempre incorporar essas formas que eles, ou esses pré-requisitos, para que as nossas cidades tenham condições de propor projetos para alavancar esses fundos internacionais, ou projetos onde a CAF possa fazer essa análise e possa apoiar realmente a quem está precisando. E quando a gente não consegue apoiar diretamente, a gente, através dos nossos aliados estratégicos, a KFD, a AFD, a gente consegue fazer essa triangulação e também com os bancos de desenvolvimento locais. Nós temos linhas de financiamento específicas para projetos de energia, para projetos de mulheres, que favorecem, digamos assim, aquelas cidades onde não conseguem atingir ou não conseguem cumprir com critérios mínimos de obtenção de crédito internacional. Então, eu acho que é todo um conjunto de ações que permitem que o dinheiro que é dos países, porque o nosso dinheiro é dos países, possa chegar aos países e às cidades e às pessoas. Então, não fica lá no meio dos grandes tomadores de decisões, fica no meio dos tomadores de decisões locais. Eu acho que essa é uma vantagem muito importante e é um know-how que a CAF tem, particularmente aqui em Recife e em Fortaleza, que podemos compartilhar com outras cidades aqui também no Brasil, o que eu acho que tem muito a ver. Niterói está trabalhando com soluções baseadas na natureza, Sobral está trabalhando, e vem vindo aí atrás, nesse ano, mais de 7 operações que têm incorporado essa questão. Então, acho que por aí é o caminho.
Que bom, Cecília, muito obrigada, e acho que né, ouvir isso realmente, né, de um banco tão relevante para a região, realmente muito, né, nos traz aí bastante esperança, porque a gente sabe que sim, a gente precisa resolver questões muito básicas ainda, né, nas cidades brasileiras ou latino-americanas, mas hoje a gente sabe que a gente pode fazer as coisas de uma forma diferente, ou buscar caminhos diferentes, né, para trazer soluções mais robustas, mais flexíveis, mais capazes de responder a diversos desafios. Então, acho que esse papel de vocês também, né, de receber a demanda, mas também de conseguir orientar, né, e de trazer alguns critérios aí tão claros e chaves para que esse investimento realmente seja um melhor investimento, né, um investimento olhando aí para frente, para os cenários futuros. A gente já está avançando aqui um pouco no tempo, mas a gente recebeu 2 perguntas, então eu vou comentar aqui as 2, e aí vou pedir para cada um de vocês também fazer um breve comentário em relação à pergunta que vocês tiverem aí mais contribuições. A primeira quais são as principais barreiras para o desenvolvimento das soluções baseadas na natureza nas cidades brasileiras? E a segunda é das ações já implementadas ou, né, que estão sendo pilotadas, quais já tiveram maiores impactos positivos junto aos cidadãos. Então, se vocês tiverem aí algum exemplo, deixo aí quem quiser começar, quem se voluntaria aí com o microfone.
Eu acho que eu posso começar. Eu posso começar, se me permitirem. Dentro das principais barreiras que a gente, pelo menos, enfrentou nesse processo, é o conhecimento, o know-how local sobre essas soluções. Então, por exemplo, a questão de trabalhar com projetos pilotos é super importante, porque, embora ele não seja, o projeto piloto não, a magnitude dele não tenha, digamos, às vezes muita relevância, mas por quê? Porque são soluções que vão direcionadas a um problema específico. Porém, se essa solução fosse transferida ou trasladada a outras cidades, com outras condições, e fosse sendo criado, digamos, um pool de conhecedores sobre essas metodologias, eu acho que facilitaria muito a questão. Nós tivemos, te cito dois exemplos, um exemplo de Niterói e outro em Sobral. Eles abriram espaço para discutir quais eram as melhores soluções que aplicavam às suas realidades e ao contexto local. Então, eu acho que isso criou, tanto na prefeitura de Niterói quanto na prefeitura de Sobral, um know-how de como fazer para chegar na solução que melhor responda à sua necessidade. Então, não tem uma receita pronta, mas tem passos e tem decisões que têm que ser tomadas, particularmente com a questão de financiamento, que tem que ser prévias e tem que ser previstas, tem que ser planejadas, porque senão fica boa a solução, e na teoria, no papel, mas na prática, levar isso até o campo mesmo, faz uma diferença. A questão da sazonalidade, tem muita variedade, muita variabilidade na questão climática, né, local, e mais ainda regional. Não é a mesma coisa fazer uma solução no Nordeste que no Sul. Então, isso também traz desafios importantes enquanto às técnicas, né, as questões mais científicas. Então, eu acho que por aí é importante que, concordo com o Carlos, ter um leque de projetos, um portfólio de projetos para poder ir avançando nesse processo.
Continuar, né, falar em seguida, eu concordo bastante que a questão da falta de conhecimento é pesada e existe também uma questão de hábito, né? As nossas soluções habituais são muito focadas em um contexto de infraestrutura. É difícil fazer as pessoas abrirem um pouco a visão de algo puramente construtivo, às vezes. Essa questão do projeto piloto é muito boa, porque serve como vitrine, né, como um modelo e como um comparativo. No Parque da Foz do Riacho Maceió, que a gente fez, só de trocar a contenção do riacho de concreto por gabião, né, já deu um visual diferente, né, e reduziu um bocado a questão do alagamento, né, aumentou muito a permeabilidade. Isso é uma coisa que está no bairro com visibilidade, as pessoas percebem, né? Então, a implantação de projetos pilotos tem também, foi uma boa colocação, porque ele traz esse viés de educar, vamos dizer assim, né, mostrar. E, assim, a melhor forma de obter programas de necessidade de qualquer espaço, né, seja residencial, seja urbano, é compreender as dinâmicas e as necessidades do usuário. É uma tarefa da pessoa que está planejando, né? Eu acho que tem que estar, você tem que ter a conexão. Aqui na Selma a gente faz isso através das equipes de educação ambiental. A gente existem questões muito. A educação ambiental para a população de baixa renda, né, está em um nível muito básico. Então a gente usa essas ações de educação ambiental para fazer também uma troca de informações, de prioridades e afins.
Talvez, Dani, só uma última palavra também do Carlos, sobre alguma experiência aí também, né, de engajamento com cidadãos, ou alguma grande barreira que ainda precisa ser superada.
Eu entraria, já que falou um pouco de barreiras, eu falaria sobre engajamento de cidadão, ou de projetos, né, ou de iniciativas. Dizer que tem sim, assim, por exemplo, o engajamento nessa questão do replantio, por exemplo, né, replantio aqui do nosso mangue, do nosso manguezal. Já existe uma adesão aí por parte de grande parte da população, colocado ali em escolas, em educação ambiental. A gente tem aqui o Dia do Mangue, então isso já está bem capilarizado, né? Esse conceito e essa necessidade de replantio, o reconhecimento do manguezal como um elemento importante. E assim, é uma coisa que de fato ficou consolidada, a questão do replantio, seja de mangue, seja das nossas próprias áreas protegidas. Você já vê que isso, em grande parte, principalmente dos jovens, já está enraizado nele, né? Ele já tem essa percepção dessa necessidade de fazer um plantio, de que isso seja repassado para as próximas gerações. Mas também a gente tem, por exemplo, ideias positivas do telhado verde, das iniciativas de telhado verde. Tem muita gente aí já usando o telhado verde, essa temática aí de telhado verde, não só em áreas comerciais onde eles trabalham, mas também em qualquer espaço desse de residência, seja em grupos econômicos maiores, mas sejam também em grupos econômicos mais vulneráveis, né, naquelas áreas que a gente chama, né, de menos acesso econômico. Também você já vê iniciativa lá daí. Então, eu acho que é um tema que ele é muito fácil de receber essa aderência social, né? Essa temática ambiental e esse resultado, quando é mostrado, a aderência é muito grande. Ele perpassa a questão econômica e social. É do mais pobre ao mais rico. Cada um tem a forma e quer contribuir com isso daí. Isso eu acho que é fantástico. Então, para mim, a solução baseada na natureza pode ser alguma coisa, mas ela tem uma força muito grande. A adesão, ela é muito grande. E eu com muita alegria essa adesão nessa geração nova. Isso me entusiasma muito, isso daí. Era esse comentário. Obrigado.
Excelente. Muito obrigada pelas contribuições de todas e do Carlos também. Volto a palavra para a Dani fazer o encerramento aqui da nossa sessão.
Eu queria, acima de tudo, assim, agradecer demais essa participação de vocês, sabe? Eu acho que é uma inspiração a gente fazer uma sessão com duas cidades que estão apostando nas soluções baseadas na natureza, que reconhecem o papel da natureza para a gente resolver desafios urbanos, né, de natureza ambiental, mas também de natureza social e, por que não, econômica. E eu fico muito também contente de ter o CAF aqui, Cecília, foi um prazer, assim, te conhecer e saber que o CAF também está apoiando, né, as cidades nessa empreitada, que a gente sabe que não é barato também, né, a gente... Os planos, elas planejam, mas para implementar é necessário recurso, né? Então, eu queria muito agradecer. Obrigada, Sofia, também pela sua moderação com as perguntas. E é isso, eu acho que com isso a gente... quero agradecer também, antes de fechar, todo mundo que está presente aqui do Brasil. A gente tem até colegas da Galícia que falam português também, e alguns colegas, com certeza, de origem espanhola, que entendem um pouco português, né? Também pessoal de Portugal. Então, eu agradeço demais. E com isso, eu fecho essa sessão de hoje do Summit, e teremos amanhã o último dia, né? Então, convido todos a comparecerem. Amanhã a gente também vai ter bastante coisa interessante, só em inglês, infelizmente, essa foi a única em português. E é isso, muito obrigada. Thank you so much for Cameron to do all the work today for the Summit, and with this, we close the session today. Thank you.
This afternoon, and I'm going to hand back over to Paulina then to wrap up.
Oh, hello everyone. It's not Paulina, it's Emma here from Green Space Scotland. Thank you, Paulina and Isabel. That was fantastic. What we've got up next is the Urban by Nature session that's coming on at 4:15 GMT. So that's up next. Before that, we've got a very short break, so make the most of the networking opportunity, and you can also still visit the expo to give your messages in our call to action for COP26. The session by Urban by Nature is going to be presented in Portuguese, but we'll have links to the programme in the chat. Urban by Nature is a programme for nature-based solutions that's been launched in 4 regional hubs worldwide. That's going to be closing day 2 of the summit, and then tomorrow we have got we've got another day of lots of different content. The theme is Routes to Recovery, and that's all about nature-based solutions for green recovery. There's a focus on financing and nature-based enterprises. We'll hear from Urban by Nature again, starting the day, and we also have a skills workshop at the very end of the summit, and that's for training in participatory services design skills, and that is aimed at environmental designers, engineers, planners, and it's a limited session, but please do join that. We hope you're going to be able to join us tomorrow. Thank you.